What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 5ts Chapter 96 Rukia's 3 views gradually shattered. Advertisement. Karakura Stairs is a heavy spiritual land, with a very high density of spiritual children. This has also led to the fact that the virtual people often flee here. Karakura Town has also become the busiest place in Shinigami. And the current chaos has caused Karakura Town to become the area with the most serious losses. Shinigami stationed here, all died here, it didn't even have time to pass the information back. Urahara Kazuki also cleaned up part of the emptiness, but they didn't interfere too much because of their identity. Over Karakura Town. The plane gate door opened, and dozens of Shinigami walked out of it. After Shimo came out last, the door of the crossing was also closed. A group of 5 people will conduct a large-scale settlement centered on the coordinates of the crossing gate. When encountering an enemy that cannot be defeated, ask for support in time. Everything is important to one's own life. Shimo looked at the Shinigami team member in front of him and ordered. Yes, Lord Shimo. The sonorous and powerful answer made people totally unable to tell that this was from the 4th Division's ambulance squad. The 4th squad commanded its 14 ambulance squads, including the 6th and 7th ambulance squads. Under Shimo's training, it has successfully transformed. Among them, the 6th ambulance squad experienced the mission action of Hueco Mundo, Rescue. There is plenty of experience in the battle with the virtual. Of course, these 2 ambulance squads have the smallest number of crew members. Because there are many Shinigami players, they can't stand Shimo's training intensity at all. They were even transferred to other ambulance classes. The combat level of these 2 ambulance squads is not inferior to the elite troops of other squads. When the voice fell, everyone divided into 5 teams and dispersed in all directions. Shimo's brows tightened after all the team members left. The breath of Korakucho seems to be more chaotic. Has Eisen noticed something? With the addition of the 6th and 7th squads of the 4th Division, Shinigami's battle with Shu was immediately mixed together. Mixed breath, as messy as a vegetable market, it's better to ask Kazuki and the others. Shimo thought about it, and the next moment he disappeared in place. The density of souls in this world cannot be compared with Yulinting after all. Ryatsu's slightly stronger existence is able to walk through the air in this world. Whether it is fast or not, it's second, the important thing is that the compulsory standard is quite high. Time has the pinnacle of Shunpo skills, even if it just walks in the air, its speed will not slow down much. Soon, he arrived at the Puyuen store. Shimo breathed a sigh of relief when he noticed that the Kido enchantment he had placed on it was still intact. It seems that people here are relatively safe for the time being. Shimo approached the Kido enchantment, a golden spell appeared on his fingertips. After engraving the spell on the enchantment, Shimo also successfully entered the Puyuen store. Yo, Shimo. Before the shop, Urahara Kazuki waved happily. Before he could say his next sentence, Shimo was the first to say. It's not necessary to see it for a long time, it's not 2 days yet. Urahara Kazuki greeted him, curiously said, why are you here again? Did Yulinting give any orders? Urahara Kazuki's brain is still very useful after all. Shimo didn't even mention anything about it, he just inferred some clues. If I guessed correctly, should it have something to do with the chaos in this world? Urahara Kazuki said to himself. Shimo nodded and sighed. Multiple teams support the world. In addition to me, there are 5 deputy captains who have come to this world. Considering the seriousness of the situation, if necessary, you can apply to Yulinting for Liberation Authority, and I am the main person in charge of this operation. Upon hearing this, Urahara Kazuki grinned and said with a smile. Able people should do more work, and with you, Karakura Town will be safer. Shimo raised his eyes and glanced at him, and said. However, Eisen found me before leaving. Hearing this name, the smile on Urahara Kazuki's face suddenly faded. Eisen is looking for you, is there any conflict between you? Shimo shook his head and explained, on the surface, Eisen is just out of kindness. The severity of the chaos has already caused the captain's attention. As the main person in charge of this mission, I naturally bear the brunt. Urahara Kazuki's face was puzzled and asked, what did Eisen say? Shimo's expression shrank slightly and said calmly. He asked me to be more careful in this world. Urahara Kazuki was taken aback, rubbed his chin and began to ponder. From a superficial point of view, this is just a concern between the captains. According to the image that Eisen has portrayed, it seems reasonable for him to say this. There should be no need to worry too much. Shimo shook his head and denied. I think things are not that simple. Advertisement. It's best to be careful. Urahara Kazuki was silent a little and nodded. Well, be careful. After a simple exchange of information, Shimo walked into the shop on his own. At a glance, I saw the black cat sleeping on the pillow. Well, Shimo came to him with a stride, before the black cat could react. He then stretched out his hand to hold it in his arms, and buried his head in the black fur by the way. The warm feeling was quietly on his face. It's like autumn, the afternoon sun. It still feels comfortable, Shimo admired. Now, little Shimo. The hair I just took care of, you messed me up again. Shihuan Yoruichi was a little angry at first, but after realizing that the person holding her was Shimo, his anger subsided. Although there is a bit of complaint in the words, but the tone is not at all dissatisfied. It's okay. Just take care of it again. Shimo was obsessed with sucking cats and couldn't help himself. It's up to you. You are just as happy as you are. There is a touch of laziness in his voice. Didi. Some hurried noises rang from Shimo's lining pockets. Shimo put down the cat slap in his hand and took out the ticking communicator from the inner pocket. This is the result of research conducted by the Technology Development Bureau, and is generally used for long-distance communication in environments with low spiritual density in this world. Oh, Shimo saw the content displayed on the communicator and was surprised. The Zuxian that Yu Ting assigned to me has arrived in Karakura town. Sister Yoruichi, I'll go out to meet each other. He carefully put the black cat back on the pillow. Pay attention to safety. Shimo used Shunpo and left the Puyuan store. Before he is sure who the other party is, can everyone in the Puyuan store be exposed to him? According to the position shown on the chanter, the other party, Seping, came from Cho City next door. As a city near Karakura town, its disorder is also extremely serious. It is also one of the cities that Shimo needs to be responsible for. The strength of this assistant seems a bit bad. Shimo waited in the air for a long time, but I still haven't seen Shinigami from there. Another few minutes passed. He felt a familiar Ryatsu. Shimo raised his brows, a little unexpected, and muttered to himself. No way, old man Sean is so sympathetic to his subordinates? As the voice fell, I only heard an excited cry from a distance. Shimo. The next moment, the pair came to him at a very fast speed. Some short stature, familiar short hair with curled tail, a single bunch of bangs hanging down to the forehead, and a slightly delicate face. The 13th Division, Rukia Kuchiki. Rukia, how could it be you? Shimo was also a little surprised. The assistant that Ling Ting assigned to me shouldn't be a Shinigami with a little bit of strength? Upon hearing this, Rukia puffed her cheeks and said in a loud voice. Shimo of damn it, I have learned Shikai now, and become the 5th seat in the 13th Division. Shimo stretched out her index fingers and poked lightly on her bulging cheeks. The chi that he had accumulated immediately disappeared. In that case, then let you be my assistant reluctantly. Shimo said with a smile. The corners of Rukia's mouth were raised, and a bright smile appeared on her face. Correct. She seems to remember something suddenly. The purification situation in Chasa City is not optimistic. Shinigami of the 13th Division. Before Rukia could finish speaking, Shimo took the hand and hurried towards the Puyuan store. I'll report on work matters later. Let me introduce a few friends to you first. Puyuan store. Before Kido enchantment. Rukia looks at the Kido enchantment looming before her eyes. If it hadn't been for Shimo to tell her, she would never have noticed that there was a Kido enchantment less than 1 meter away from her. What a clever Kido enchantment. I really want to see the senior who set up this Kido enchantment. Shimo rubbed her onion head and smiled. It's right in front of you. Upon hearing this, Rukia's eyes widened suddenly. You said this is your arrangement? Shimo nodded and stretched out his index finger to outline the golden Kido spell. Under the influence of the Kido spell, the barrier was opened smoothly. And Rukia also saw the Puyuan store in it. Oh, new friends are here. Urahara Kazuki was cleaning the courtyard at this time. Hello, this is Urahara Kazuki. Advertisement. When I saw Urahara Kazuki, the shock on Rukia's face grew stronger. You are that? Well, that's right, Urahara Kazuki said with a smile. The exiled by Soul Society. Shimo gave a detailed introduction to it. The former captain of the 12th Division and the first director of the Technology Development Bureau, Urahara Kazuki. You can also call him the manager of Urahara. All in all, he is a very rude person. I heard that Urahara Kazuki is a bit dissatisfied. Shimo-kun, are you misunderstanding me? As a store manager, I'm just being more easygoing with my customers. Shimo ignored him and pulled Rukia into the shop. Never mind. Urahara Kazuki shook his head, a little discouraged. Tessai, let's go to the Eisen clinic. Shimo nodded and stretched out his index finger to outline the golden Kido spell. Under the influence of the Kido spell, the barrier was opened smoothly. And Rukia also saw the Puyuan store in it. Oh, new friends are here. Urahara Kazuki was cleaning the courtyard at this time. Hello, this is Urahara Kazuki. When I saw Urahara Kazuki, the shock on Rukia's face grew stronger. You are that? Well, that's right, Urahara Kazuki said with a smile. The exiled by Soul Society. Shimo gave a detailed introduction to it. The former captain of the 12th Division and the first director of the Technology Development Bureau, Urahara Kazuki. You can also call him the manager of Urahara. All in all, he is a very rude person. Hearing that, Urahara Kazuki is a bit dissatisfied. Shimo-kun, are you misunderstanding me? As a store manager, I'm just being more easygoing with my customers. Shimo ignored him and pulled Rukia into the shop. Never mind. Urahara shook his head, a little discouraged. Tessai, let's go to the Ishin clinic. Shimo-kun, remember to look after the shop. Urahara said it's a pity for Shiba Ishin's lost Shinigami power. He wanted to try it and try his best to help Shiba Ishin regain his strength while ensuring that Kurosaki really coaxed his life. In any case, he is also a strong leader at the captain level. Rukia and Shimo walked into the interior of the Puyuen store. At this time, her head was still a little groggy and she didn't react. What's the situation? Why does Shimo know such a dangerous person? The exiles of Soul Society are not all the heinous people? Sister Yoruichi, I'm back. Shimo greeted the room. Rukia looked around the house, the simple, Qian de Jiao, decoration, no one else seemed to exist. Shimo, who are you talking to? Shimo walked to the pillow and picked up the black cat. Of course it was with this lazy black cat. She's Rukia, and she is one of my most cherished people. Hearing the latter sentence, the black cat slightly squinted and suddenly opened. Kuchiki fears Kia. She is quite clear about the Kuchiki family. Cat, did the cat speak? Rukia Kuchiki looked shocked, as if seeing something incredible. Per Kia. Shimo put the black cat down and introduced. She is Shihuan Yoruichi, who once held a series of titles such as the captain of the 2nd Division, the commander of the hidden mobile unit and so on. Rukia's expression seemed to be numb. She didn't think so much before meeting Shimo. Shihuan. Is the Shihuan family of the 4 nobles the same as the Kuchiki family? But why? Shihuan's family is a black cat. Genkia accepted that she couldn't. Smoke rises in the room. Ahem, where's the smog? When Rukia was caught off guard, she was choked by the smoke. Now, Rukia. A soft voice rang in Rukia's ear. Shihuan Yoruichi, who has changed into a human form, leaned close to Rukia and whispered. Now, do you have any doubts? Looking at the scene in front of her, Rukia's face instantly heated up, turning to a flushed color, and a vague mist rising from her head. Clothes, the insignificant voice sounded in the room. Rukia Kuchiki's 3 views were once again obstructed and crushed. Chapter 97 Ling Wu, Soda no Shirayuki, Advertisement. Little Rukia. What are you shy of? Shihuan Yoruichi looked at the embarrassed Rukia playfully, his right index finger stretched out and raised his chin. This Rukia's small head is hot, and the flushing color spreads directly from her cheeks to the roots of her ears. In front of Shihuan Yoruichi, she seemed to be incomplete in her words. Shimo next to him was watching the scene before him with relish. Can't let the little Shimo next to him continue to take advantage. Seeing that Rukia has a tendency to be steamed, Shihuan Yoruichi also stopped his bad behavior in time. After seeing her put on the clothes, Rukia came back to his senses leisurely. Well, what is going on with all this? The 3 of them were sitting around the vermilion tea table. Rukia asked a little bit. The scene just now caused a certain impact on his soul. Little Shimo, it's me or you. Shihuan Yoruichi's head is propped with arms, and it seems that he hasn't walked out of the cat-shaped laziness yet. Let me do it. Shimo sorted the language and tapped the desktop lightly. Things have to be talked about more than 200 years ago. With Wakia's puzzled gaze, Shimo told her part of the matter. Urahara and Shihuan Yoruichi became exiled by Soul Society because of the mediocrity of Central 46. As for Shimo, I met Shihuan Yoruichi a long time ago. Regarding this point, his noble status can already be well illustrated. Rukia had no doubts about Shimo's words. To be precise, no matter what Shimo says, she now chooses unreserved trust. Of course, Shimo did not deliberately conceal the facts from Rukia. After all, Eisen is a thoughtful player who is very dedicated to observation and layout. Even for a player like Shimo who has studied acting for decades, he must converge his excess mentality in front of him. Otherwise, with Eisen's ability, he must be able to observe something. In this case, hiding part of the truth is better protection for Rukia. She just needs to know that Shihuan Yoruichi and Urahara are her own, and that's fine. Is that so? 817 Rukia lowered her head, propped her chin with her small hands, thinking. What happened today has given her a great impact, and she needs to slow down for a while. Shimo and Shihuan Yoruichi looked at each other, and both saw the smile in each other's eyes. In this state, Kia seems to be a little bit natural. D. The rapid sound rang on Rukia's body. When hearing this voice, Rukia's expression suddenly became very vertical. She hurriedly pulled out the communicator. The density of Lingza in Chasa City suddenly increased, and many Jillians appeared above the city. Hearing this, Shimo stretched and stood up. In that case, let's go to Chasa City. The order in this world must be maintained after all. Shihuan Yoruichi's golden eyes flashed with a hint of bright color, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and he smiled. It just so happened that I was rusty in the store. I will accompany you. Shimo nodded, not taking this matter to heart. As for Shinigami, who was worried about being stationed in this world, discovering the trace of Shihuan Yoruichi. This kind of speculation is too dry and outrageous, almost non-existent. After all, Shihouen Yoruichi is also the former captain of the 2nd Division, and he also has the title of Flash Goddess Yoruichi. Normally Shinigami wants to find her traces, it's still a bit too difficult. The three of them used Shunpo and left the Puyuen store. On the way to Shisa City, Shimo noticed that Rukia's Shunpo level was much better than before. Not only that, the stability of Ryatsu is also better than before. As the 5th seat of the 13th Division, she did not rise up with the surname Kuchiki. Kia now has the strength to match the position of the 5th seat. Rukia, your strength has indeed risen a lot, Shimo praised. Hearing that, Rukia is like a cat being petted by someone, squinting her eyes and smiling happily. Of course, in order to catch up with your footsteps, I work hard every day to practice. Advertisement, the new check-in task has been released. Please host check-in and check-in in the current Chesa City, and fight against Byagang. Ruzenbang, close black lens bracket. Task reward. Peak white hits. Shimo, who stepped on Lingziyu flying in the air, suddenly became weird. What the hell? Why is this guy Baragan coming to this world by 2? Is this his own idea, or is it under Eisen's instructions? The appearance of the long-lost check-in task did not bring much surprise to Shimo, on the contrary, it made him feel a lot of doubts. Rukia noticed the change in Shimo's face and asked subconsciously. Shimo, what's wrong with you? Shimo calmed down and smiled. Nothing, I just remembered something. After thinking about it, Shimo just left the matter behind. What about Baragan is nothing more than the second Espada. If he dares to appear in this world, Shimo dares to let him stay here forever. Of course, if this guy is acquainted, maybe you can consider keeping him alive. The present world has been fully monitored by the Technology Development Bureau. If a high-intensity battle really broke out, it would somewhat arouse Yu Lingting's attention. Although some of his strength has been exposed, Shimo still wants to hide another hand. What's more, Baragan's abilities are somewhat similar to him, and have certain research value. If you can, it's a good choice to keep it as your next opponent. After realizing that Baragan might come to Shisa City, Shimo thought it would be better to hurry up. He stretched his arm and directly wrapped Rukia in his arms. Rukia looked dazed, before she recovered. Speed up. Shimo whispered in his ear immediately. Amidst Rukia's exclamation, he showed his full stride. The disappearing figure made Shihouen Yoruichi's expression slightly startled. Little Shimo's Shunpo has always been so strong? How many secrets does this guy hide? Chesa City. Shimo's Shunpo speed is more than Rukia's, I don't know how much. But within a few minutes, he arrived in Shisa City. From a distance, I saw several black figures standing among the tall buildings. The long black body, like a slender cloak, moved in the air. The clown-like mask and long pointed nose look a bit funny. The huge virtual hole is located in the center of the body. Inferior Manos Grande, Jillian, ahead, several Shinigami are struggling to resist Jillian's invasion in the air. Considering that they are not the elite troops among Shinigami, it is normal to have difficulty facing Jillian. Kun Linj, and the fleshy, Vientian, flapping wings, and the name of mankind, scorching heat and conflict, rolling south across the sea, and marching forward. When Kia was put down by Shimo, she started to chant the Kido mantra. Shimo didn't shoot immediately, he watched quietly from the side. Several Jillians want to kill Shinigami in front of him, it's still a bit difficult. It's just this opportunity to see what level of Kido's level is. Because of the stimulation of Shimo's strength, Rukia's practice of assiduousness far exceeds that of ordinary Shinigami. This is also the reason why it quickly rose to the 5th seat in the 13th Division. Rukia has used her own efforts to prove that her status is not obtained by the surname Kuchiki, or by Shimo. The crimson flames condensed in her palm, boom. The huge crimson fireball whizzed out from Rukia's palm, and launched amazing power on Jillian's body. Roar. Jillian hurts and makes weird roars on its long black body, there were signs of anxiety. The 31st Hado chanted completely, under Rukia's performance, has already threatened Jillian. Jillian, who was attacked, finally noticed Shimo and others. It abandons its immediate target and moves towards the person who caused it damage. Other Jillian also followed. The ground makes a rumbling sound, giving people the illusion of an earthquake. Lin Kia, leave it to you. Shimo smiled and said, let me see what your current level is. 1. Hearing that, Rukia's mouth was filled with a confident smile. No problem. Advertisement, Shibani City is stationed at Shinigami Kia, please release the authority. Rukia said to the communicator. Soon, Jing Lingting gave a response. Allow liberation. She took a step forward and pulled out Zanpakutō, condensing her own Ryatsu. Ling Wu, Soda no Shirayuki. Zanpakutō Soda no Shirayuki, the most beautiful in Soul Society, is not much different from the usual sealed state before Shikai. However, after Shikai, the appearance has changed dramatically. The pure self-colored blade, handle and guard. The knife is oval in shape with 6 hollows. The front section of the handle is attached with exquisite patterns, and the end is tied with a slender white ribbon. From the appearance alone, Shu Zishui is not like a weapon for combat, more like an exquisite handicraft. However, the chill radiated from it shows that it still has a lot of potential. Chuawu Yubai. The cold voice came out from Rukia's mouth. She is very calm when talking about fighting, paying attention to every detail. With arms waving, Soda no Shiryuki's knife pointed downwards, drawing a huge circle on the ground. Jillian, unconscious, didn't even notice the danger coming. At the moment of stepping into the circle, the cold air rises from the ground. The huge white beam of light rushes straight into the sky. The light of Wien stained the heavens and the earth into white. Shihu and Yoruichi could not help but admire such a sight. As expected, Soul Society's most beautiful Zanpakutō, even the way of fighting is full of beauty. Shimo echoed. It's really good, and it's powerful. Kilian, who has stepped into the white zone, has completely lost his life. Jillian, who was shrouded in a beam of light, directly condensed into ice, and there was no more sound. Click. The ice cubes nearly 100 meters high are broken and turned into crystal particles scattered between the sky and the earth. Seeing this, the other Jillians stopped slightly. His impoverished brain didn't seem to realize what was going on. Second dance by Lien. Rukia didn't stop there, her face was cold, and Zanpakutō clasped her hands firmly and plunged into the ground. As Ryotsu poured in, layers of ice rose on the ground. A large amount of air conditioning blows out diagonally upward like an avalanche. Jillian, who was enveloped by this air conditioning, soon followed in the footsteps of the previous one. The same ice crystals are scattered between the sky and the earth, like flying snowflakes. The remaining two Jillians noticed something wrong. They opened their mouths, and the red Ryotsu light gathered in their mouths. Two Jillians move abnormally in sync zero, however, because it's the subordinate Manos Grande, it takes some time to condense Ryotsu. Upon seeing this, Wen Kia took a step forward with a hint of chill in her purple eyes. 3 dances for nothing. Soda no Shiryuki stabbed in front of the knife, and the water vapor in the atmosphere instantly froze, condensing a white ice blade. After all Ryotsu was poured in, Rukia's face was a little faint. However, the length of the ice blade in front of him has reached a terrifying length of 100 meters. Sword slash. The simplest cutting technique taught in the Spiritual Academy is also the most effective cutting technique. The 100-meter-long ice blade made a piercing sound in the air, slashing straight through the mouths of 2 Jillians. The red Ryotsu light extinguished instantly. Jillian who invaded this world will be wiped out. Upon seeing this, Rukia slowly exhaled a white breath, as if in the middle of winter. Solved. She looked at Shimo with some excitement, and when she was about to speak, she realized that Shihu and Yoruichi's expression suddenly became very solemn. This chasing force immediately, Rukia saw a shocking scene in the sky ahead. The pure blue sky made a cracking sound like glass. Several huge white claws tear the sky apart. A huge black cavity suddenly appeared in the sky. The horrible oppressive force spreads in the black tone. Espada is second. Here it comes, Chapter 98 The Arrogant Skeleton King. Advertisement The Throne of Bones stands tall in the sky. The majestic old man sits in the osseous throne with his hands on the armrests of the throne. A blood-red light flashed faintly in Sensia's skull eyes. The old man on the throne, with a crown-shaped headdress on his head and a huge golden compass around his waist, wears a long jacket-shaped coat, giving full play to the demeanor of Hueco Mundo. The former, Hueco Mundo, practitioner, now the second Espada, Quangshingang, Ruzenbang. Behind him stood 3 guys who weren't very human, each of them looked extremely arrogant. Although Baragan himself is somewhat of the majesty of the Hueco Mundo, the subordinate officers he selected are actually more uglier than the other. Let's not talk about the Abila Malda who looks a bit like a bird. Only the human monster next to it, Charlotte Kuru, visually gives people an unbearable feeling of discomfort. Muddy taste the old and majestic voice uttered from Baichingang's mouth. The smell of the world is even more unpleasant than I imagined. Moreover, there is the disgusting Shinigami. The arrogant gaze swept toward Shimo's direction. Report your name, Shinigami. Let me give you the most magnificent death. At the moment he was watching, Rukia instantly lifted his sleeves and pointed at the enemy, with a vigilant expression on his face. This is a completely instinctive reaction. The terrifying Ryotsu radiated from Baragan, pressing on his heart like a mountain. The 4th Division Deputy Captain, Kyōraku Shimo. Shimo stepped forward and stood in front of Rukia, calmly looking at the arrogant Baragan. Rukia unexpectedly discovered that the oppression from the other party disappeared in an instant. She looked at Shimo's back in a dazed manner, meditating in her heart. It turns out, am I still under his protection? Shihu and Yoruichi walked to his side and whispered. Hand over the battlefield to little Shimo, he can handle it. Rukia glanced at Shihu and Yoruichi, then nodded hesitantly. The two played Shunpo and left behind Shimo, Vice Captain? A look of doubt appeared on Baragan's old face. Who gave you the courage to stand in front of me? Shimo sighed. Once the Hueco Mundo, Emperor, today's prodigal dog. What qualifications do you have to come to this world to believe and yell? In the final analysis, it's just a waste of super bullying. Click. Baragan's palm cracked, and his bone throne appeared slightly cracked. His eyes widened, glaring at Shimo. Very good, tiny guy. You successfully angered me. Facing this, Hueco Mundo, Emperor, Shimo was a little helpless, he continued. You said that if you don't have the mental capacity, don't argue with people at will. Forget about arguing, but you can't say that others are frustrated. With this majesty alone, you are the ruler of Hueco Mundo with a hammer. Shimo, who has experienced strong winds and waves, is obviously far better than Baragan in terms of psychological endurance. In a few words, he swept his mentality to the brink of rampage. Baragan's face froze, and veins swelled on his bare arms. Kurufon, Lita, Guy Elias. The hoarse voice came out of his mouth. Tear that Shinigami to me. Baragan's fingers stretched out and pointed in Shimo's direction. Yes, Your Majesty. As the Espada with the largest number of subordinate officers, Baragan has 6 subordinate officers. Although it only brought 3 people this time, it is also a force that cannot be ignored. These 3 subordinate officers belong to the level of Arankar and have extremely strong Ryotsu. Seeing these 3 subordinate officers picking up their swords and rushing towards them, Shimo was a little surprised. I thought that under the stimulation of words, Baragan would lose his mind and directly attack him with all his strength. But now it seems that the other party's mania is only an appearance. Sure enough, as the former ruler of Hueco Mundo, being able to survive in Eisen's hands is bound to have its own advantages. This forbearance may be the reason why Baragan has survived so far. His existence almost represents the history of the existence of Hueco Mundo. Let the subordinate officer come to test first. It's really cautious. Shimo said the other party's purpose. The 3 subordinate officers all have the strength of the deputy captain level. The sound retweeted, and their figures instantly appeared in front of Shimo. Advertisement: the sword held high is approaching Shimo's cheek. Bakudo's 39-round gate fan. Reiatsu trembled, forming a transparent protective cover in an instant, resisting Shimo's. The sound of vibration transmits a long range in the air. Shocked expressions appeared on the faces of the 3 of them. They did not expect their full blow, and they did not cause any harm to them. Even Shimo's position did not move. Seeing this scene, Baragan narrowed his eyes slightly. Funny guy. The hoarse voice returned to calm again. Just like. The impatient scene just now was just the way he showed it to outsiders. The real Baragan has a mentality that ordinary people cannot understand. The 3 subordinate officers glanced at each other, but saw the solemn color in each other's eyes. They nodded at the same time, and immediately turned away from Shimo's position. Shine, the beautiful queen of the palace Jingwei garden. Cut off his head, air war bend. Engrave it on the surface of the water, the sting knife is broken. Shouting loudly, passing a long distance in the air. After seeing part of Shimo's strength, the 3 subordinate officers decisively chose to liberate the sword and enter the state of returning to the blade. After Guy Elias and Kinda returned to the sword, there was nothing but a slight change in form. One is that the right arm is turned into a huge crab claw, while wearing a white carapace, both offensive and defensive. Lita, on the other hand, turned into a humanoid lion curse, covered with red feathers, and had 2 pairs of slender wings. Although it seems to be very oppressive, for Shimo, there is not much threat. It's nothing more than changing from a wisp of ant to a stronger ant. Daohan's subordinate officer named Kalufeng became even more eye-catching after returning to the edge. He is still in human form, but he changed his clothes into a pink color, and added a red cloak and a red skirt. The degree of spicy eyes has taken it to the next level. Shimo felt like he couldn't look directly at him. Kia and Shihuan Yoruichi from far away, looking angrily at the distant battlefield. So powerful Ryotsu oppresses. Is this the real powerhouse on Hueco Mundo? Rukia murmured. Shihuan Yoruichi glanced at her and explained softly. These 3 are just subordinates of the old man next to him. It looks very strong, but it's a tool to test Shimo's strength. A look of surprise flashed in Rukia's eyes. Test your strength? Shihuan Yoruichi explained. From the perspective of Ryotsu's perception, it doesn't matter if it's the 3 weird imaginary creatures or the old man. The Ryotsu on them all give people a strong sense of oppression. Usually Shinigami can't even stand in front of them normally, let alone the courage to talk about combat. But you feel Ryotsu of little Shimo. Hearing that, Rukia tried to perceive Shimo's Ryotsu in the distance. After a while, a look of shock appeared on her face. How is it possible, Shimo, why doesn't he have the slightest Ryotsu? Shihuan Yoruichi raised the corner of his mouth, staring at Shimo in the distance, and whispered. That's because of the difference in rank. In my perception, Shimo's Ryotsu seems to be dry and dry. Looking at these 3 weird-looking virtual creatures, Shimo suddenly sighed and said frankly. Actually, I shouldn't let you fall back, it's really ugly, spicy eyes. Hearing Shimo's words, Kurofon's anger was immediately aroused. He thought he was the most beautiful person in the world, and he couldn't bear this kind of linguistic ridicule at all. Seeking flowers, oh, ugly people, let the noble Kuru wind grant you death. The beautiful Charlotte Kuru is the ultimate, sacred, every second, pretty, super powerful, sexy and charming Sero. The long name is called out, making Sero more powerful than the Sero of ordinary subordinate officers. I saw his hands forming a heart shape, from which a pink Sero burst out. Seeing this, the other two subordinate officers also released their own Sero. The purple Sero, the red Sero and the pink Sero gathered together, spinning and bombarding Shimo. Under the powerful Ryotsu, the air seemed to be trembling. In the face of Sero's attack, Shimo still did not evade. I saw his right hand in the depths, facing each other, and said calmly. The 88 of Hado. Flying dragons strike thieves and shake the sky and thunder cannons. A dazzling blue light burst out from Shimo's palm. The violent Ryotsu continued to gather in his palm. Boom, the blue beam of light whizzed out, and the sizzling thunder and lightning were wrapped around it. A huge sound roared in the sky above the world. Advertisement. Like a thunderstorm, raging in the sky. The faces of the three subordinate officials showed horror, and they couldn't imagine what kind of force this was. They wanted to use the ring to escape from Hado's attack range on the 88. However, it was too late. The roaring thunder was full, swallowing three Seros between stares and breath, and continued to attack forward when he had enough energy. When they were unable to dodge, the three Ajuka's Arankars were also swallowed by the 88 Hado. Just like their Sero, there is no trace. After the thunder cannons raged in the sky, no clouds were visible. Looking around, there is a vast expanse. Facing the death of the subordinate officer, the expression on Baragan's face did not fluctuate at all. With his arm propped on his chin, the color of thinking flashed in his one eye. After a long time, Baragan's hoarse voice sounded again. Is this the power of the deputy captain of the 4th Division? It's funny enough. Do you know how much it costs to deceive a king? Shimo shook the white smoke rising from his palm, and said with a smile, still claiming to be a king, Baragan? The dignity that you can't let go of makes you lose the possibility of regaining power. The violent Ryotsu continued to gather in his palm. Boom, the blue beam of light whizzed out, and the sizzling thunder and lightning were wrapped around it. A huge sound roared in the sky above the world, like a thunderstorm, raging in the sky. The faces of the three subordinate officials showed horror, and they couldn't imagine what kind of force this was. They wanted to use the ring to escape from Hado's attack range on the 88. However, it was too late. The roaring thunder was full, swallowing three Seros between stares and breath, and continued to attack forward when he had enough energy. When they were unable to dodge, the three Ajuka's Arankars were also swallowed by the 88 Hado. Just like their Sero, there is no trace. After the thunder cannons raged in the sky, no clouds were visible. Looking around, there is a vast expanse. Facing the death of the subordinate officer, the expression on Baragan's face did not fluctuate at all. With his arm propped on his chin, the color of thinking flashed in his one eye. After a long time, Baragan's hoarse voice sounded again. Is this the power of the deputy captain of the 4th Division? It's funny enough. Do you know how much it costs to deceive a king? Shimo shook the white smoke rising from his palm, and said with a smile. Still claiming to be a king, Baragan? The dignity that you can't let go of makes you lose the possibility of regaining power. Hearing this, Baragan squinted his one eye slightly and stared at Shimo. You seem to know a lot? Shimo nodded naturally and admitted. Far more than you think. However, as an abandoned child, you don't need to waste more words. Baragan's gray eyebrows moved upwards, fully reflecting the inner surprise. What's the meaning? Shimo pouted and sighed. Of course it means literally. You are already a useless abandoned son. Although Shimo doesn't know Eisen's true thoughts, this does not prevent him from keeping Baragan in this world forever. Having said so much to him, can it still make him go? Baragan rose from the throne, moving his body. You are the same as that disgusting guy. You always say ridiculous things. But since those three wastes didn't kill you, let me send you a funeral. After the tall Baragan stood up, he felt more oppressed. The terrifying Ryotsu, with it as the center, signed the entire city. All the Shinigami stationed here are trembling and their eyes trembling. Rukia, who is closer, is only able to suppress the fear in his heart and try to face the former, Hueco Mundo, Emperor. I saw Baragan stretch his stout arm towards his bone throne. Ryotsu was enveloped, and the twisted bone throne seemed to come alive, pouring into his palm. After a while, a huge double-edged axe appeared in his hand. The sharp and gleaming blade of the axe was facing Shimo. The humble Shinigami. Baragan looked at Shimo arrogantly and said lightly. I will grant you death. 0 Chapter 99 The power equal to time. Advertisement holding a double-edged great axe, Baragan's momentum rose again several levels. Ryotsu, the second horror from Espada, also officially appeared in front of the world at this moment. Genkia's face changed slightly, and she suddenly realized something. If they fight, Chiyu City will cease to exist. Under the pressure of Ryotsu, Rukia almost forgot her duty. However, Shihuan Yoruichi did not change his expression. Don't worry, Kazuki and Tessai had already arrived in Shisa City when each other came to this world. As early as the little Shimo was fighting the three ugly guys, they were already human beings in this city. There are probably only a few marginal humans left that have not been transferred. Upon hearing this, Rukia breathed a sigh of relief. Although she is not a particularly kind character, she can't bear to watch the death of human beings in a beautiful city. Suddenly, Shihoin Yoruichi raised his brows slightly, and took out the spirit cover clothes he had prepared to cover himself and Rukia. Retransformed into a cat form, she and Rukia can hide in a spiritual cover. Yoruichi-senpai, Rukia looked at the black kabuto hat that suddenly appeared on her body and the black cat on her shoulder. The captain of Jing Lingting is here. It's not easy for us to meet him, just hide it. You should know Bakudo on the 26th, right? Shihoin Yoruichi's voice became a bit masculine. Rukia nodded subconsciously. In the vicinity of Lingshi, set up number 26 Bakudo. August 17th. In this way, even the captain-level Shinigami can't notice us anymore. Shihoin Yoruichi explained. Rukia moved her mind and whispered in a low voice. Bakudo number 26 bent light. The self-color light surging at his fingertips, and soon it was wrapped in Rukia, who was wearing the clothing of the spirit. Vertically, his figure gradually disappeared in place. The next moment, Reiatsu waves appeared in the distant sky. The door of the Soul Society was opened, and a Shinigami dressed in ikiba and wearing weird decorations walked out of it. The crazy look made people avoid his gaze subconsciously. The pale complexion and the black face have already explained his identity. Captain of the 12th Division, Director of the Technology Development Bureau, Kuretsuchi Miyuri. The moment he came out of the piercing gate, he took a big breath in the air. A powerful virtual taste, Gia. I have never seen such a powerful Manos Grande. Miao Li, who has always paid attention to the reality, will naturally not let go of the first-class experimental materials like Bacon Gang. As Yinmeng stepped out of the gate closed. Yo, Shimo-kun, Kuretsuchi Miyuri yelled from a distance, try to keep a few limbs that can be studied. If you can catch alive, that would be great. You can fight without worry. I have blocked them from Soul Society. Hearing this, Shimo's heart moved. Obviously, the appearance of Kuretsuchi Miyuri is not just for Baragan, the first-class experimental material. More, he still wanted to verify his previous conjectures. But since he was so acquainted, Soul Society was blocked. Then Shimo can also let go of the fight. Two more Shinigami. Baragan's white eyebrows were tightly closed together, a bit more majestic. It's okay, it's just another slashing effort. Obviously, he didn't take Kuretsuchi Miyuri and Ni Meng in his eyes. Of course, Kuretsuchi Miyuri's Reiatsu is no more than an average captain. His strength is not in his fighting ability. In his view, science is the primary productive force, and at the same time the primary fighting force. At this point, his thoughts were unexpectedly the same as Urahara Kazuki. Although there are many grievances between the two, Kuretsuchi Miyuri never wants to take a look at Urahara Kazuki. Shimo slowly pulled out his Zanpakutō from his waist. Don't waste time. He whispered, end your long and boring life as soon as possible. Oh, arrogant guy. Baragan laughed disdainfully, is it the confidence that killing my 3 subordinate officers gave you? If you think me and them are on the same level, that would be a big mistake. Following the last sentence, the huge axe slashed towards Shimo. The swift speed is even beyond the visual capture range of ordinary Shinigami. Advertisement from afar, Rukia saw only an afterimage flashing in the air, and the axe blade had already approached Shimo. When Rukia noticed this, his heart suddenly grabbed. I don't know when, she seems to have regarded Shimo's existence as an inseparable part of her life. When Shimo was in danger, Rukia even subconsciously prepared to rush towards the battlefield. Fortunately, a black cat crouched over his shoulder. Calm down, Rukia. Some hoarse voice came from the black cat's mouth, you have to have a little confidence in little Shimo. He who can defeat Zaraki Kenpachi is no longer bound by the so-called deputy captain title. The strength of the little Shimo now can be firmly in the forefront even among the captains. Shihoin Yoruichi's voice, with firm trust the crisp sound of the collision of gold and iron agitated above Shisa City. The power of horror is transmitted from the huge axe blade. Shimo frowned slightly, feeling a little pressure. After all, it is Wang Shu of Vasto Lord level, so I can't take it too lightly. As if hearing Shimo's self-talk, Baragan smiled disdainfully. Shinigami, in my opinion, your strength is not worth mentioning. Speaking without shame or anything will not increase your confidence. Boom. On the stout arm, the veins are exposed. Baragan raised the axe of destruction again, focusing his whole body power on the axe blade. An astonishing sound rang from Shimo's Zanpakutō. Rumble like thunder in the thunderstorm, the shockwave of terror, the center of gravity of the dry collision erupted. The ripples visible to the naked eye impacted on the nearby tall buildings. Rumble, a tall building that can withstand a magnitude 7 earthquake, collapsed instantly under the impact of this force. Crushed stones, bricks and gravels are falling, raising the dust that obscures the world. Oh horns! Dyuli noticed this scene, took out the pen and paper from his pocket, and began to record. Absolute power suppression does not belong to any captain at all. On the level of pure strength, it has reached the highest level of 100 in the record. The rustle of writing seemed very abrupt on the silent battlefield. However, the Nirvana dream behind him remained unchanged, and it seemed that there was nothing more important than protecting Kuretsuchi Miyuri-sama. The space quivered, Shimo's heart shuddered, and Baragan in front of him had disappeared. Reverberate. Strong wind came from behind him, and Shimo backhanded Zanpakutō back. A dull voice came from behind. Under the impact of such power, Shimo flew hundreds of meters in the air. Baragan grinned, I didn't expect you to react. It's really surprising. Shimo stopped in midair, his expression still calm. Is this what you are proud of? It looks like you seem to be very proud of it. Baragan's grinning diminished, somewhat surprised. Looking at your expression, it seems to be very clear about my ability. Shimo held Zanpakutō with his right hand, with the tip of the knife pointing down. For espada, death takes many forms. Different forms of death also correspond to your different abilities. The expression on Baragan's face gradually became astonished. For a long time, he stepped falsely in the air and laughed loudly. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect it, a Shinigami can know so clearly. Yes, what I symbolize is aging. Baragan seemed very enthusiastic, explaining his abilities to his enemies. In his view, his own ability is the existence of insoluble. Aging is equal to time. Baragan stretched out his palms, a confident and proud smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. It is the strongest and most absolute power in the world. It is a force of death that lies before all lives. Regarding this, Shimo's face seemed flat and there was no surprised look. But Kuretsuchi Mayuri in the distance suddenly started to get excited. The power equal to time? Jihaha, coming to this world this time is the most correct decision I have ever made. Advertisement, what do you mean, Yinmeng? Ni Yinmeng replied blankly. Sir is always the most correct. Kuretsuchi Mayuri didn't care about the flatness of his tone, but excited himself. The collision of two identical forces is really exciting. Shimo-kun, don't let me down. Baragan narrowed his eyes slightly when he saw Shimo's expression. The reaction of the other party was completely different from what he had expected. He didn't see any negative emotions on Shimo's face. Surprise, fear, trembling, regret, none of these. It's surprising, don't you fear this power at all? Baragan directly asked his doubts, where is there any absolute power? Shimo said bluntly, the absolute power depends on who the user is. Hearing that, Baragan laughed disdainfully, I thought you had sufficient self-confidence. It turns out that I just can't believe the existence of this kind of power. In this case, let you see the power of aging. Sound Zhuan was activated again, and the afterimage appeared in the air. When Baragan appeared again, he was already in front of Shimo. The thick thousand arms grabbed Shimo's head straight. Judging from his posture, it seems that he is going to decay his head directly. Pouting. The sound of the knife hitting the flesh sounded over Shisa City. Shimo's Zanpakutō went straight into Baragan's handhall. How big is your heart to do such a stupid thing? There was a hint of irony in Shimo's tone. I didn't realize the attack just now, did you? Bacon Post obstructs the hole, miniature, seems to think of something. Impossible, he exclaimed, and even ignored the pain on the pierced palm. This is my unique power, he rang again, and suddenly pulled out his pierced palm, blood splashed in the air and on the ground. Under normal conditions, it cannot affect you, then try this. Baragan stepped into the air, the blade of the axe of destruction downward. Rotten, King Skeleton. In the next moment, an anomaly suddenly occurred. The black Ryatsu surged from the middle 0.0 of the axe blade, submerging it like a surging flood. Return to blade, also known as sword liberation, is a unique ability of Arankar. It is fundamentally different from Shinigami's Zanpakutō liberation. The premise of returning to the blade, it is to seal its own virtual core into the shape of a knife. After liberation, it is the same return of one's own abilities. Ryatsu dissipated, and Baragan after returning home showed his true appearance. His old body was completely transformed into a skull and he wore a gorgeous crown on his head. There are chains on the side of the crown, hanging down to the links of the arms, wearing a loose robe, and a necklace with crown eyes hanging on the chest, just like the arrival of King Kun. The slender skeleton pointed his finger out, pointed at Shimo, and Baragan whispered. Humble Shinigami, see this side of me, can you still have the confidence you had before? The coercion from the Hueco Mundo, the Great, covering the entire Chasa city. Face death. Baragan stretched his arm forward and took out the axe of destruction that turned into a full-length black from the void. The sound reverberated, and the afterimage disappeared in the air. Next moment, boom, it was several times more powerful than before and hit Shimo's Zanpakutō directly. The sound that should have been intertwined between gold and iron has been transformed into that kind of crackling sound. So close to me. Baragan opened and closed the skull's mouth, and strands of black smoke released from it. You have been enveloped by death, with a long sigh, from Baragan's mouth. Sigh of Death. Chapter 100. The end of Hueco Mundo, Great. Advertisement. Decay is my friend, and Eisen is my servant. I let the crows peck at my body again and again, and wait for your arrival in the Elm Pavilion again and again. The moment Baragan's voice fell, centered on his feet. The power of black decay spread instantly. Saifum's secret footwork. Empty cicada. The corner of Shimo's sleeves automatically fell off without wind, and fell into the power of decay. And he himself seemed to have disappeared within the scope of the power of corruption. It's just watching from the sidelines. Kuretsuchi Miyuri grinned open, revealing Yu Kankan's teeth, and his eyes moved quickly with irregular frequency. You can feel the power of this horror. Even the captain is helpless in the face of this kind of power. Very sound dream. What's your face? Kuretsuchi Miyuri noticed the unchanging look of Ni-Inmeng, and was annoyed. Humble fellow, how do you understand the horror of the power of time? Look up. The four white thunder of Hado. The quirky character is fully reflected at this moment. Kuretsuchi Miyuri, in order to prove to Nirvana that what he said was true, mobilized Hado to attack Baragan. Although it is a simple number 4 Hado by lay, however, with the blessing of Captain Ryotsu, he also exerted a great power. The white thunder and lightning with the thickness of the arms screamed toward the force of decay. Ni-Inmeng's expression finally showed a rare fluctuation. When the broken thunder light touched the black decay power, it only lasted for a breath. Immediately under the catalysis of time, the desertification dissipated between heaven and earth. Yu Li's aggressive behavior also annoyed Bai Qin Gang at this time. The hollow skull eyes looked in the direction of Kuretsuchi Miyuri. The humble reptile. Are you also provoking the emperor? Zhang Yi's Senzi teeth give people a great sense of oppression. 14. Fortunately, Kuretsuchi Miyuri is not very human, so he was not frightened by the scene in front of him. Jia, is it convenient to tell me your name? Baragan was confused by this sudden question. What's the meaning? I'm ready to kill you, you still want to ask me for your name? Perhaps it is the same different brain circuit from ordinary people, or it is because there is no brain organ in Baragan's skull after returning home. My name is Baragan Louisenbairn, the great and immortal Hueco Mundo. Let me give you death. Before he finished speaking, Baragan saw what Dakuli wrote grinningly in his notebook. At the same time, he still said something in his mouth. The 99 trial item of false chaos, Baragan Louisenbairn, is a decadent power equal to time. After Baichingong heard this, the anger that had been extinguished once again burned vigorously. The humble bug system, the high axe of destruction, the black Ryotsu haunts it, giving people a sense of fear of death. Success. Ni-Inmeng subconsciously stood in front of Kuretsuchi Miyuri, trying to block this attack. The dull voice agitated. Shimo's figure appeared in front of Baragan again. Baragan, our battle is not over yet. I think you should give a certain amount of respect to your opponent. Seeing Shimo, who was still unscathed from the beginning of the battle, Baragan's expression gradually became serious. Although it is not clear how Skeleton made a solemn expression. But that white-boned face really gave people such a feeling. It was my negligence. I didn't expect Shinigami to still exist like you, Baragan said solemnly. In order to show that I value you, I give you the most magnificent death. Sigh of death. Another round of black decayed power spread from beneath his feet. Anything that touches this power will disappear between the heavens and the earth. Whether it is physical objects or energy, Baragan's decadent power showed signs of almost invincibility. Kuretsuchi Miyuri and Ni-Inmeng far away from the center of the battlefield. Although he is crazy, he is not stupid with no preparation at all. He can't resist this almost unsolvable force even after the solution. Shimo, this guy. Kuretsuchi Miyuri looked at Shimo, who was fighting Baragan, his eyes flickered. What are you waiting for? All the tangible and intangible things around, under the action of the force of decay, are not able to resist a few breaths of time. After being eroded by the 9 quantities of time, most things have been ruthlessly deserted. As Baragan said, nothing is eternal. In front of Shinigami, we also have to face the existence of death. The absolute power that lies in front of everything in the world. Even Shimo has to admit that Baragan's abilities are really incomprehensible. If you change to Shinigami, who is mainly in close combat, you will really have to drink hatred on the spot. Advertisement, pity. Shimo used Shunpo's rotten power that flashed through the impact, and said with a calm expression. The power of time is not unique to you. There was a bad feeling in Baragan's heart. He manipulated the power of decay and rushed towards Shimo frantically. The building collapsed, the ground rotted, and black potholes continued to appear in Shisa City. Even the reappearing clouds in the sky are constantly being decayed. The whole city fell into the nightmare of aging. Black gradually enveloped the city of Shisa. The tip of the Zanpakutō knife in his hand was down, and all Ryotsu burst out at this moment. When Rukia applied for the lifting of the restrictions, all the restrictions on the release of Shisa City had been lifted. I feel Ryotsu, who is huge and terrifying like a galaxy. Baragan's expression changed again. The look of Jia Zhang appeared on his skull-shaped face. As if the world is oppressing you, an emotion that has never been experienced appeared in Baragan's heart. It seems to be fear. Baragan noticed this. His skull face became abnormally distorted. In his heart, fear does not belong to the Hueco Mundo, Emperor, and should not exist in him. Small. It's so small, Baragan roared, venting his emotions. Everything is nothing but trivial. Whether it's Shinigami, humans, or virtual and Arankar, the difference and war between you. Will and freedom, ulu and vegetation, stars and mountains. All are trivial. Shimo looked at Baragan calmly, and Ryotsu surrounded him like stars. You are Gaff. Baragan Rusan state. Hearing that, Baragan's voice was stagnant, and immediately continued to roar. In this world, only my power is unique and absolute. Anything else is trivial. This world should be controlled by me, who possesses the supreme power. The palm of the skeleton waved in the air, and the black and decayed force was like a dark cloud, instantly enveloping Shimo in it. Seeing this scene, Baragan breathed a sigh of relief. Look, in my eyes, your lives are actually the same as ants. Kyōraku Shimo, that's it. Obviously, in Baragan's eyes, the object shrouded by his power. Neither Shinigami nor imaginary can escape the fate of being decayed to death. The ending is set. Stop time. Well, a calm and familiar voice came from the decadent power that melted into a black ball. Baragan's expression froze immediately, and he murmured subconsciously. How can it be a familiar power burst out at this moment? The crimson sword is entwined with the power of nothingness, like a stone falling on the surface of the lake, radiating in all directions in a corrugated manner. Shimo held the black knife handle tightly, and stood the slender blade in front of him. The power of Shi stopped instantaneously stagnated the decadent power that was constantly approaching him. The so-called aging is nothing more than the most obvious application of the power of time. He encircled the power of the stop on the blade. He lifted it up and launched a vertical cut from top to bottom. The black decayed power in front of Shimo was instantly split. That's it, Baragan. See the real power of time. An expression of horror appeared on the face of the skeleton. Baragan couldn't understand how his own unique power could be possessed by others. And the owner is still a humble Shinigami. This is impossible. It must be the ability of the illusion system? It must be. The huge impact made Baragan a little speechless. There are 5 seconds left. Shimo checked his condition and said calmly. Feel it for yourself and you will understand. Mouth. The power of Shija diffused at this moment and enveloped the entire Shisa city. As if someone had pressed the pause button, everyone's behavior had stopped in the current state. The look of horror was fixed on Baragan's skullface forever. Kendo Secret Rain. The red slender blade slashed across the sky. The impact visible to the naked eye is released from the instant. Above the sky, it seemed as if a layer of dark clouds was shrouded in an instant, the moment when the fine rain fell. The skeleton-shaped Baragan was also eroded to death in an instant. The rain that was crushed by the sword swallowed him completely until he died out. Stop and lift. GG, how could that guy die so easily? Kuretsuchi Miyuri smiled strangely, obviously confident in Shimo. Advertisement. The moment Kuretsuchi Miyuri saw the crimson blade splitting the power of decay, Kuretsuchi Miyuri felt confident. But when it returns to normal again, wait, where's Baragan? Kuretsuchi Miyuri yelled out of form, where's my 999 test product? It must be. The huge impact made Baragan a little speechless. There are 5 seconds left. Shimo checked his condition and said calmly. Feel it for yourself and you will understand. Mouth. The power of Shija diffused at this moment and enveloped the entire Shisa city. As if someone had pressed the pause button, everyone's behavior had stopped in the current state. The look of horror was fixed on Baragan's skullface forever. Kendo Secret Rain. The red slender blade slashed across the sky. The impact visible to the naked eye is released from the instant. Above the sky, it seemed as if a layer of dark clouds was shrouded in an instant, the moment when the fine rain fell. The skeleton-shaped Baragan was also eroded to death in an instant. The rain that was crushed by the sword swallowed him completely until he died out. Stop and lift. GG, how could that guy die so easily? Kuretsuchi Miyuri smiled strangely, obviously confident in Shimo. The moment Kuretsuchi Miyuri saw the crimson blade splitting the power of decay, Kuretsuchi Miyuri felt confident. But when it returns to normal again, wait, where's Baragan? Kuretsuchi Miyuri yelled out of form, where's my 999 test product? What happened? Kuretsuchi Miyuri, who was agitated, did not notice the abnormality. For example, the loss of time. So what happened? After being affected by the ability to stop and stop, Chinese City has resumed normal operation again. Rukia looked at Shimo with a dazed expression on Shu 820 stepping in the air. What about the enemy? Why is Shimo alone? Shihun Yorichi's performance is not much better. In the golden eyes of the cat, a thick color of doubt flashed. Her memory stayed at the moment Shimo used Zanpakutō to split the power of decay. Then, this is the scene now. I don't know, maybe it's a force we can't understand. Shihun Yorichi shook his black cat head early and gave up thinking. The check-in task has been completed and the reward is being issued. Congratulations to host for getting the top white hits. With the previous experience, Shimo can easily bear it when he receives the relevant memories of white hits again. Since then, Shimo has reached the pinnacle of the 4 basic skills of Shinigami fighting. Although there is no reward for the punch and task related to slashing skills, it is based on the results of the kendo competition with Yuno Hana Retsu. The pinnacle level is just the most conservative estimate. The promised sword intent not only brought him offensive, but also the upper limit of the countless swordsmanship. There is no end, the real infinite, saw, Shimo-kun. Kuretsuchi Miyuri walked towards Shimo, who was still in the air with a strange smile, and asked. What about Baragan? He is an experiment I value very much. Look at this. Before he finished speaking, he saw a dark figure flying towards him. Kuretsuchi Miyuri subconsciously stretched out his right hand to catch. A frightening scene appeared on his right hand. The decadent power swallowed his arm instantly and spread upward. Yinmeng, cut off my Yuqian. Ni Yinmeng has always followed Kuretsuchi Miyuri's orders very much. The cold light flashed, and Kuretsuchi Miyuri's right hand snapped down. Take out the container and put that thing down. Naemeng turned his head straight down and rushed towards Kuretsuchi Miyuri's broken arm. Then he took out the test tube container from nowhere, and filled it with what Shimo had thrown in. Kuretsuchi Miyuri took out the meat supplement and injected it into the fracture of his arm. The granulation was surging, and an arm was regenerated in the next moment. He took the test tube container that Ni Yinmeng had handed over, and stared at his white bone palms with bright eyes. It's really an excellent experimental material, unfortunately, the amount is too small. Kuretsuchi Miyuri grinned to Ultimate, smiling distortedly. Write the name on the container. If I remember correctly, he should be called Baragan. Ruzenbang, Chapter 101 Eisen's Evaluation. Advertisement Stagnation Palace shakes. All garrison captains were again transferred to the first team building for a captain meeting. A Manos Grande of Vasto Lord level appeared in this world. The destruction and collapse of half the city of Chesa. The 12th squad versus half the 10th squad. They were sent directly to the reconstruction of the order in the world. Repair memories, build buildings, etc. The work of Gode 13 has again increased several times. A lot of resources were sent to the 12th division. First team house. Yamamoto Genryusai looked at the captains standing in it with a particularly solemn expression. Just yesterday, the Manos Grande with Vasto Lord level arrived in the city of Shisa City in the current world coordinates. In other words, it should be Wang Shu. The captains were silent, with different expressions. It claims to be Baragan. Ruzenbang, the emperor of Hueco Mundo, who commands the entire Hueco Mundo. The 4th Division's deputy captain Kyōraku Shimo fought fiercely with him in this world, resulting in the complete destruction of half of Shisa City. Having said that, Yamamoto Genryusai paused. The 5-seat Rukia Kuchiki of the 13th Division stationed in Shisa City promptly moved humans from it, avoiding a large number of human casualties. For the present illusion, the old man believes that Kyōraku Shimo, the deputy captain of the 4th Division, will be responsible for a long time. After all, he closed his eyes slightly, waiting for others to speak. Oh, old man Sean doesn't need to be so serious, right? Kyōraku Shunsui, as his most concerned disciple, naturally did not have that serious and solemn tone when speaking. Since Shimo can guarantee the stability of this world, let him continue to stay in this world. Of course, remember to raise the salary a little bit. Yamamoto Motoyanagi said on his forehead, this is natural. As for the official duties of the 4th Division, Eggflower smiled and said, there are more notes to help me talk about sharing. In fact, Yamamoto Genryusai's words are just a cutscene. Even the blind Tusen Kanami knows that Kyōraku Shimo, the deputy captain of the 4th Division, and Kyōraku Shunsui, the captain of the 8th Division, have the traditional skills of his family. Be lazy. In Shimo's words, it's called Weiyu, but the deputy captain will never take any action that can be resolved by the 3 seats. However, due to his own strength and qualifications, no one said much. The matter is so set. Shimo, who is in this world, has no idea that he has been sold by Kyōraku Shunsui. And also sold for a very good price at the captain meeting. Not only the assignment of Shimo's future tasks was discussed, but also the tasks of other squads. The mission requirements of Captain Miao Li of the 13th Division have been directly improved. It is required to develop a psychic tool to break the concealment of Ryotsu as soon as possible. The 2nd Division Captain Broken B needs to devote all his energy to intelligence searches. The arrival of the Vasto Lord level Wang Shu is not a trivial matter. If the place where it descended is not the world, but the Lingting Palace, it will cause more serious damage. Although Shimo was able to kill Wang Shu at the Vasto Lord level, some captains had doubts. But because Kuretsuchi Miyuri was helping him speak, doubts disappeared a lot. What's more, before that, the battle between Shimo and Zaraki Kenpachi ended. It has been seen by many Shinigami in Lingting, therefore, there are not many voices of doubt. The 5th Division team house, in the captain's office. Eisen is working at the desk under the dry window. For his own tasks, he has always been one of the best captains accomplished. Yin, what do you think of this matter? When putting down the brush in his hand, Eisen cast his gaze out of the window. Wuyu flowers are scented, the team members are busy coming and going, a harmonious scene. Oh, ask my opinion? Ichimaru Jin, dressed in Lingshi clothing, walked out of the shadows in the room. It's really hard to answer, however, there is no need to test Shimo-kun's strength anymore. The second Espada Baragan died in his hands. Having said that, Ichimaru Jin did not go on. The situation is already here, it's obvious. Yes, how about you? Eisen continued to ask. Ichimaru Jin cast his gaze behind him, and Tusen Kanami appeared in the captain's office, also dressed in a spiritual mask. The strength of Kyōraku Shimo has surpassed the average captain. If we forcefully target him, it is very likely that our plan will be exposed. Advertisement as a blind person, Tusen Kanami wears goggles, making it impossible to detect his thoughts in his eyes. Yes, your heart is upset. Aizen's words made Tusen Kanami's naturally drooping palms suddenly stiff. Tsuneyashiro Tokunada's death is inseparable from Shimo-kun. So, when talking about him, you chose to avoid it deliberately. Aizen's control of the human heart is very precise. Just like the chess pieces on the chessboard, Shimo-kun has the ability to surpass other chess pieces. But, after all, he was not able to go beyond the chessboard and become a chess player. He is very confident about Kyoka Suigetsu's abilities. Of course, it's not 100% trust, more importantly, from Shimo-kun's words and deeds. It can be seen that he is not a stickler. Eisen continued, strictly speaking, Shimo-kun is in the same category as us. Hearing this, Ichimaru Jin's eyes flashed with surprise. Aizen's evaluation of Shimo is not low. He has never regarded others as equals, but at this time he took the initiative to put Shimo on the same level. Aizen-sama seems to value Shimo-kun very much. Ichimaru Jin's Kyoto neck is a bit tentative. Eisen gave him a meaningful look, and a gentle smile appeared on his face. Yin, your eyes are narrow. You are the same as you want. You only see the scenery right now, but you ignore the more important things. Tusen Kanami was silent, but doubts appeared on his face. Regarding Aizen's words, he and Ichimaru Jin are equally puzzled. I once specially collected information about Shimo-kun. Before joining the Spiritual Arts Academy, he seldom worked hard to practice himself. In other words, the current super captain level strength was achieved by Shimo-kun in just a few years. Under the sunlight, the black-rimmed glasses on Aizen's nose reflect the sunlight, making it difficult to see his look. However, Ichimaru Jin and Tusen Kanami, who were standing opposite to him, had shocked expressions on their faces. In time, Shimo-kun may be able to become the second Yamamoto Genryusai. Eisen continued, no, maybe he can approach that dimension infinitely. In this world, Karakura stares at the outskirts. Shimo looked helplessly at Kuretsuchi Miyuri in front of him. Captain Kuretsuchi Miyuri, is this the good news you said? Before the end of the chaos, I have been guarding the world? Kuretsuchi Miyuri spreads out his hands and tries to make his smile look kinder. However, Shimo has a weird expression. You should follow the usual expression. Do you have no idea about your current dignity? Kuretsuchi Miyuri tried many times, but finally gave up. Well, I gave up. Negri, who has returned to an abnormal state, looks more pleasing to the eye than before. This is an order from the captain, and I can't help it. In addition, I came to you this time mainly because of other things. A suspicion flashed across Shimo's face, and he quickly reacted. Baragan's bone palm? He asked. Kuretsuchi Miyuri nodded, a bit impressive on his face. The special container used to hold it was actually made of a cut-off space. Even if the palm of the bone is in the space of the boundary, it is constantly releasing the power of decay. According to the observation data, the container will collapse in a month at most. Hearing this, Shimo embraced Shuangqian, calmly said. What does this have to do with me? You can't save, it's because of your own low level of scientific research. Facing Kuretsuchi Miyuri, Shimo was not at all polite when he spoke. He has been like this since he figured out his character. GG, Shimo-kun. I know you can save this thing, so I came to you again. Shimo raised his eyebrows and said, what in exchange? Kuretsuchi Miyuri froze. What do you mean? You helped me cover up the fighting situation in Shisa City. I have given you what you want. But you can't save, that's your own problem. Now that I need my help again, shouldn't I exchange something for it? Shimo said calmly. Negri scratched his neck, and several bloodstains appeared on it. Advertisement, the question is, what do you want? Shimo seems to have been waiting for these words, all the research data of Baragan's palm. Hearing this, Kuretsuchi Miyuri was stunned for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth were grinned to both sides. Of course no problem. This is a boundary container, Shimo-kun is troublesome. He has always guessed about Shimo's power. Even if Shimo didn't conceal Kuretsuchi Miyuri, he was only vaguely aware of it. This comes from the confidence of scientific researchers. If it is combat, it's like the battle between Shimo and Baragan before. Without preparation, he couldn't even discover the cause of Baragan's death. Shimo took the container and felt it a little bit to make sure that the other party did not tell lies. He has been observing the boundary space for more than a year. The extremely high time density is its most distinctive feature. Shimo opened the container and put his right hand in directly. Under Kuretsuchi Miyuri's staggering sunlight, Shimo's fingertips touched the bones of his palms. All right. Immediately, Shimo re-blocked the container and handed it to Kuretsuchi Miyuri. Is this really okay? Kuretsuchi Miyuri is a little skeptical. Shimo smiled on his forehead. This is Baragan's right hand, the handheld used for combat, once holding the axe of destruction. It is contaminated with the power of its virtual core, so it can release the power of corruption. But, do you really think the power of decay is endless? Shimo's words gave Kuretsuchi Mayuri a bad feeling. What's the meaning? The meaning is clear. Shimo pointed to the broken world container and said, "This thing can be stored for up to 3 months. After the power disappears completely, it will turn into a spiritual child and return to this world." Kuretsuchi Mayuri looked surprised. "You mean that if I study for 3 months at most, this thing will disappear?" Shimo nodded. "Yes. The soul is escaping. Don't you understand this situation better than me? Money. There is no way to stop it." The bath cocoon was silent. With the passage of time, the expression gradually distorted. He seemed to have suffered a blood loss when he found this sale. Although the boundary container can only last for a month, this does not mean that he has no other boundary containers. Prepare 2 more, you can enjoy the research results exclusively. But now Shimo waved, turned and left. "I will return to Soul Society in 3 months. Don't forget to prepare an extra copy of the research results." Seeing Shimo's departure, Yuri's distorted expression gradually returned to normal. On the contrary, his smile is gradually crazy. The purpose is achieved. Kuretsuchi Mayuri squeezed the broken boundary container tightly with 2 fingers and shook it gently in front of his face. The power of Shimo-kun. Finally I can answer the doubts in my heart. The speculation about Shimo's power has been torturing his curiosity. But he couldn't make recommendations for research. After all, the difference in strength makes Kuretsuchi Mayuri know a lot about it. One carelessness, he estimated that he would be similar to Baragan's fate. Fortunately, through this transaction plan, a certain sample was finally obtained. Kuretsuchi Mayuri is very satisfied with this. It's just a matter of sharing part of the research results. Behind him, the piercing gate slowly opened, and Kuretsuchi Mayuri returned to Soul Society with excitement. After he left, Shimo's figure appeared again in the same place. I hope Kuretsuchi Mayuri after the study is over. The mentality will not be more distorted. Shimo raised his mouth and smiled. In addition, I hope that the research results will satisfy me. Chapter 102 involved in the chess game, Urahara Kazuki's research results. Advertisement. Shimo did not resist the task of garrisoning in this world. As for how long the chaos will be over, he had a general guess in his mind. Perhaps when Eisen's plan is fully developed, the world will return to normal. Approximately, it will be more than 10 years. He recently heard that Shiba Isen has changed his surname and changed his name to Kurosaki Isen. Although the reason Shiba Isen gave was to better hide his identity. But Shimo knew that this old snake skin was definitely the blood of the exterminator of the greedy family. Of course, he will not stop this kind of thing from happening. If a hang-up ratio cannot be borne, how should his subsequent clock in tasks continue to progress? According to his speculation, to a certain extent, the check-in task has a certain connection with the world's inferences. However, Shimo also has his own plan. Karakura Town. Puyuen Store Underground Research Institute. Shimo looked at Urahara Kazuki, who was in the research state, and found that he was very similar to a person. As the head of the Technology Development Bureau, he seems to be very similar to Kuretsuchi Mayuri in some places. At this time, Urahara Kazuki was holding 7 test tubes in one hand, and his complex expression contained a hint of thinking. After a long time, he put the test tube in his hand back on the test tube rack. Urahara Kazuki's expression was somewhat low, and he sighed. No, it failed again. The hollow of the Quincy is still uncontrollable. For Kurosaki's really coaxing hollow, he has been thinking of other ways to control it. Even if it can be delayed, it is great. Void corresponds to human beings, Shinigami corresponds to Quincy. Shimo did not know where he took out an apple and bit it. Shinigami lives in this world, living in the righteousness is the right choice. He specifically asked Urahara Kazuki for a Ryatsu isolation skeletal to cover up his own Ryatsu. If you want to suppress hollow, you can only inject a stronger corresponding force. Kacha, it can be seen that second generation's virtual whiteness is indeed very strong. Shimo is quite clear about the general concept, but the specific operation of 820 still depends on Urahara Kazuki. Of course it's strong. Urahara Kazuki explained with a smile. If Kurosaki hadn't really rushed there, Isen might have died in Naruki City. In addition, I have a little guess about the person who attacked him. Shimo interrupted his words before he said the words. Eisen. Such an obvious role, do you still need to guess? Only he can have such ability. Kyoka Suigetsu, Lingshi clothing plus number 26 Bakudo bent light. Shimo waved his hand and said with humility, don't say it's Isen, even me, I probably can't perceive his Ryatsu. Urahara Kazuki rubbed his nose and couldn't comment on Shimo's words. Indeed, Ryatsu's hiding has been done ultimate. But Shimo threw the core out of a perfect parabola, right in the trash can. Stop it. The importance of these irrelevant things. It's a matter of urgency, you should hurry up and fix the issue of Quincy Hollow. There is not much time left for you. After revealing some information about sacredness to him, Urahara Kazuki seemed to take this matter to his heart. As for whether he can work out related solutions, Shimo has some confidence in this after all. Urahara Kazuki, as the 5 major combat power, represents a means able to solve all problems and predicaments cleanly with an endless stream of unknown means. If there is a problem that he has not been able to solve, it must be a failure to put the problem in front of him in time throughout the life of Urahara Kazuki. The record is quite brilliant. If Kurosaki Ichigo is the representative of the game, then Urahara Kazuki is the existence of making plugins. I will do my best. Urahara Kazuki's expression became firm again. Suddenly there was a cat cry in the underground research institute. Before Shimo turned around, a black figure leapt on his shoulders. Little Shimo, the Shinigami you mentioned, has come to Karakura town. Shihuan Yoruichi reached his ear and said softly. Come yet? Shimo's eyes lit up, it just happened to pass by. The next moment, his figure indicated that he disappeared in place. Urahara Kazuki's expression was slightly stunned and realized that something was wrong. Is it possible to use the Ryatsu isolation skeleton to perform such steps? Shimo, this guy. He shook his head, suppressed the surprise in his heart, and turned and plunged into the study. It is above a tall building 30 miles away from Puyuan's store. Hinamori. Shimo saw the black figure in a death tyrant from afar. Shimo-kun. Hinamori Momo nodded, his expression somewhat indifferent. Advertisement. For this former classmate, she did not have too much communication. But the basic etiquette is still necessary. In an instant, Shimo came to Hinamori Momo's side. Unlike Hinamori Momo's ready-to-fight attire, Shimo is a typical modern outfit. Your clothes. Hinamori Momo noticed something wrong. Shimo pulled the inner lining and motioned. This is you, in terms of my actions in this world. After all, stationing in a city is very boring. A clear look appeared on Hinamori's face. As for Shimo's character, she had heard of it in the 5th division. Of course, according to the current situation, Shimo is her chief, she is not qualified to question. But as long as there are no problems in this world, then there is nothing wrong with each other. I don't know, Shimo-kun called me over, is it because there is an important task? Hinamori Momo got to the point and asked. Shimo nodded and explained. The situation in Konku town has temporarily stabilized. However, 9 cities including Shibasa City, Sakihara City, and Nikicho are all experiencing deteriorating chaos. Hearing that, Hinamori Momo's expression became a little nervous. Shimo glanced at her and continued. In the coming period, I will leave Karakura town from time to time and go to other cities for support. So the garrison mission of Karakura town will be handed over to Hinamori for the time being. So far, everything Shimo has said is a tangible truth. Hinamori Momo replied, but her face was still a little confused. But, Shimo-kun, why leave this task to me? Shimo smiled and explained. Karakura town has a much higher density of spirit children than other cities, and it is likely to cause large-scale chaos again. In this case, I need a qualified team player to resist the chaos for a period of time. If you go out because of the situation in other cities, it will last until I return. And Hinamori, your Kido's accomplishments are pretty good, and I trust you very much. Hinamori Momo's puzzled expression turned into a sudden look. Understood. Just leave the task that Karakura is staring at and leave it to me. When Hinamori Momo was about to leave, Shimo suddenly called her out. Wait, Hinamori. Hinamori Momo turned around, with a puzzled look on his face. Bia. I want to ask you a question. Shimo's mouth raised, and his smile was gentle. Shimo-kun, just say it directly. Hinamori Momo also smiled. What do you think of Captain Eisen? Shimo has a problem in his mind. When hearing this question, Hinamori Momo showed a surprised look, his cheeks were slightly red. Captain Eisen. I think about it, he is a very gentle person. When talking about Eisen, Hinamori Momo's words seemed to increase suddenly. Shimo played a loyal audience at this time. After he finished speaking, he just continued to speak. Is that right? It seems that Captain Eisen is really a very good person. Hinamori Momo nodded excitedly. In her opinion, as long as you praise Eisen, then we are good friends. I have no problems. Just leave the task that Karakura is staring at and leave it to me. When Hinamori Momo was about to leave, Shimo suddenly called her out. Wait, Hinamori. Hinamori Momo turned around, with a puzzled look on his face. Bia. I want to ask you a question. Shimo's mouth raised, and his smile was gentle. Shimo-kun, just say it directly. Hinamori Momo also smiled. What do you think of Captain Eisen? Shimo has a problem in his mind. When hearing this question, Hinamori Momo showed a surprised look, his cheeks were slightly red. Captain Eisen. I think about it, he is a very gentle person. When talking about Eisen, Hinamori Momo's words seemed to increase suddenly. Shimo played a loyal listener at this time. After he finished speaking, he just continued to speak. Is that right? It seems that Captain Eisen is really a very good person. Hinamori Momo nodded excitedly. In her opinion, as long as you praise Eisen, then we are good friends. Advertisement. I have no problems. Hinamori. Hurry up and get acquainted with the environment Karakura is staring at. Shimo's smile, as usual. Hinamori Momo left, completely different from the expression when he came. Looking at his leaving back, the smile on Shimo's face gradually faded. For Hinamori Momo, he doesn't even know what to say. It doesn't matter if you have a simple personality or if you don't have enough brains. Anyway, in Shimo's opinion, she was a little bit wrong in her behavior. Excessive trust in Eisen made Hinamori Momo never hesitate to hit his childhood sweetheart Hitsugaya Deshiro. Just because of a letter. Shimo thought that there was an attack on the soul burial that he intervened in the beginning, which could change Hinamori Momo a little bit. But now he found out that he was wrong. It was outrageous. Hinamori Momo still trusts Eisen, as if he is the sky and the only light. If that's the case, then start from your formal involvement in the chess game. Shimo looked at the back of Hinamori Momo's departure. If you think about it, you should be willing to give your strength to Eisen. With the death of Baragan, life in this world returned to peace again. Although the chaos still exists, it doesn't have much impact on Shimo. It's nothing more than walking back and forth between several cities. For a boat, it takes a few days at most for a trip to be able to come back. And Urahara Kazuki's research also has some eyebrows. 3 months later, Shimo went back to Soul Society and saw Kuretsuchi Miyuri's stinky face again. Space is stagnant, Shimo-kun, you really deserve it. Kuretsuchi Miyuri gritted his teeth and was very dissatisfied with Shimo. Thanks for the compliment. Shimo smiled on his forehead and asked. What about the research results? Kuretsuchi Miyuri's eyes rolled and said. Some time ago, there was an accident in a study, which caused a lot of equipment to be burned. Unfortunately, the research results on the power of decay are among them. Hearing that, Shimo is around. Sure enough, many devices have been replaced with brand new ones. However, although Shimo is not in Soul Society, but I still know some things that happened in Soul Society. Because the Technology Development Bureau needed to study the concealment of Ryotsu, it applied for a large amount of funds from the first team. Kuretsuchi Miyuri also took this opportunity to replace many old equipment. This kind of thing, Shihuan Yoruichi came to Soul Society once and he was able to clean it. Click. A flash of cold light shines on the scabbard on Shimo's waist. Kuretsuchi Miyuri, how about I will buy you another batch of equipment? Ahem. Kuretsuchi Miyuri hurriedly changed the subject when he saw that he could not be confused. Fortunately, I made a backup in advance. I saw that he took out a pile of self-paper from his arms and recorded a lot of words densely on it. Shimo took the white paper and glanced roughly. The deal is concluded and the cooperation is happy. He put away the white paper and waited to study later. As for the authenticity of the documents, there is nothing to worry about. There is also an expert in this world. If it is not for the issue of Urahara Kazuki and Hollow, it needs to be studied. Shimo may hand Baragan's bone palm to Urahara Kazuki. Baragan's decayed power still has a certain reference value for Shimo. Fundamentally speaking, the power of decay also belongs to the power of time. Shimo did not stay in Soul Society for too long. The chaos in this world is still unstable. From time to time, fierce battles erupt in cities. When Shimo returned to the Urahara store, he was immediately pulled over by Urahara Kazuki. Puyuen store. However, your help is needed. Urahara Kazuki's look was a bit excited. Quincy, Shinigami, Shu, and human beings have different characteristics. The present Karakura town. That's because they are in an equal dimension. If a higher level of power intervenes, it may be able to replace one of them. Therefore, after retrieving what he deserved, he returned directly through the gate. Shimo-kun. Painting, according to many experiments, the power of time is above these. Huge Ryotsu? Shimo had some doubts, and guessed. Urahara Kazuki gradually stabilized his mind and explained. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Underground Research Institute, or the Power of Time and Space. I have found a way to suppress Hollow. Chapter 103. The Power of Replacement. Hollow is suppressed. Advertisement. Shimo frowned upon hearing Urahara Kazuki's solution. Although the liberation of Shi is unique, the power of time is not unique to me, right? If I remember correctly, Kido forbidden technique involves the power of time. Urahara Kazuki's tone still showed a little excitement. Kido and liberation are fundamentally different. The liberation of Shinigami Zanpakutō involves the power of the soul. The so-called Kido, even the Kido forbidden technique, is just a special way of operation of Lingza. The two seem to have the same effect, but they are actually quite different in nature. Hearing that, Shimo's face showed the color of enlightenment. Although he does not use the Kido forbidden technique, his Kido accomplishments are not inferior to the old Kido Tessai. For what Urahara Kazuki said, it's clear enough, the liberation of Shinigami Zanpakutō is unique. That's because Zanpakutō was originally the power deep in Shinigami's soul. Kido's performance can be similar or even the same. But the power of Zanpakutō is unique to each Shinigami. Then what do you mean? Shimo still can't think of how to replace the power of Zanpakutō with Kurosaki. The excitement on Urahara Kazuki's face gradually disappeared, and he calmed down again. This is a new problem. I need a suitable container to ban your time. However, according to my calculations, it consumes a lot of energy and time, and may only be able to block a trivial point. The power of time is still too high after all. Urahara Kazuki sighed. Compared with the ordinary Kido system, the element system directly attacked the Zanpakutō system. Your instinct seems to surpass all Zanpakutō. Shizai's heart shuddered and didn't go to talk. When he heard Urahara Kazuki's guess, he recalled his time throne in the Zanpakutō space. Although it is still not clear that the time is on the throne. But what is certain is that the ladder of time will become more difficult to climb next. The road to becoming stronger is not so easy to follow. At the very least, Shimo already has a pass to break through the dimension of Shinigami. Compared to other Shinigami, it has already won at the starting line. Urahara Kazuki didn't notice the change in Shimo's expression, but continued to speak for himself. I have tried to ban the power of Kido and make a simple Kido. I saw him turning around from the research platform and taking out a few black balls. Shimo-kun, please be defensive. Shimo looked curiously at the strange creation in his hand. I saw Urahara Kazuki flicked his finger, and 3 small black balls in a row came straight towards him. Shimo's right thousand index finger lightly tapped in the air, and a light blue spiritual shield appeared in front of him. 8 Rebuke of Bakuto. The crimson flames intertwined with the thick thunder and lightning, accompanied by the powerful Ryatsu impact, instantly swallowed the spiritual shield. Shimo frowned slightly, looking at the crumbling spiritual shield, and immediately added a Kido. Bakuto's 39-round gate fan. A new round shield, added in front of it. After the bursting flame swallowed the spiritual shield, the raging thunder and lightning followed and impacted on the round gate fan. It didn't disappear until the Ryatsu was exhausted. Instant Kido, no need to chant. Urahara Kazuki's tone was a bit of ostentation. How does Shimo-kun feel about this thing? Shimo frowned slightly, recalling the power that Kido had exploded just now. In terms of power, it is similar to Kido, who gave up chanting, only 1/3 of the original power. As for consumption, it seems that only a little Ryatsu is needed to drive it. Overall, the advantages seem to be many. Urahara Kazuki smiled and was very satisfied with Shimo's evaluation. But, Shimo's conversation turned. This thing is very expensive to make, Ryatsu, right? Urahara Kazuki's expression was a bit impressive. Unexpectedly, Shimo-kun did some research in scientific research. Yes, the cost of Ryatsu to make a Kido ball is more than 3 times that of a normal Kido. Urahara Kazuki generously admits to the shortcomings of his own work. He is a pragmatist and also very humble, never feel complacent because of the appearance of a certain creation. Hearing this, Shimo nodded. Even if it is 3 times the consumption, that's pretty good. Advertisement. If it can be manufactured on a large scale, it can be promoted in Ulinting. In this way, Shinigami's casualties can be reduced. However, Urahara Kazuki shook his head. The production method is really not too difficult. But simple materials can only ban Kido under 40. If the higher Kido is, its consumption will increase more than 10 times. The gain is not worth the loss. Shimo's expression was slightly startled, and said regretfully. It seems a pity indeed. For the several Kido black balls that just broke out, Shimo can clearly distinguish those Kido black balls. Hado Red Artillery number 31, Hado Kenghuo number 33, and Hado Charge number 1. The power is quite satisfactory, but the shortcomings are also obvious. Kido, who gave up chanting below the 40th, was only able to involve the enemy. Too small. Shimo expressed regret for this. Like chicken ribs, it is useless to eat, but it is a pity to discard it. It's okay, Shimo-kun. Urahara Kazuki's expression was indifferent, and he didn't take this matter to heart. For him, this was just a trivial attempt in a long scientific research career. This is just an attempt. In the next period of time, I hope you can cooperate with me to complete the research. After I can ban Kido forbidden technique, I will find you to try to ban Zanpakutō's power. Shimo nodded, without any guidance. He is still happy to help Urahara Kazuki's request. What he lost was nothing more than a little Ryatsu. This thing, as much as you want, correct? Shimo suddenly remembered that there was another thing that needed Urahara Kazuki's help. He took out a wad of white paper from his arms, and it was filled with various words. This is what I traded with Kuretsuchi Mayuri. The above is a study of Baragan's unique decay power. Do you see what's wrong? In addition, I feel that this thing should be helpful to your current research. Urahara Kazuki curiously took the white paper file in Shimo's hand and looked at it seriously. A moment later, a smile appeared on his face. Kuretsuchi Mayuri is a lot more honest this time. From the content of this, there is no problem. It's a pity that the research on the power of decay didn't help me at all. Urahara Kazuki bluntly said, hollow is the erosion of the soul, although the power of decay involves time. But in essence, it is just a derivative force of the force of time. What's more, the effect of this thing on the soul's erosion even exceeds hollow. Shimo handed it over to Urahara Kazuki. You should study first. At that time, help convert those complicated terms into easy-to-understand language. The text above seems too cumbersome. Although I understand the meaning of those professional terms, it is easier to understand if you are not a professional researcher. No problem. Urahara Kazuki made a gesture immediately. He was immersed in research again. Upon seeing this, Shimo also left the underground research institute. The dull research atmosphere is not suitable for him. The air outside is fresher. With the passage of time, it is gradually on the right track in this world. Hinamori Momo was arranged by him to be stationed at Karakura. Right now, it is estimated that I am already familiar with the environment of Karakura town. However, Karakura town, where the Puyuen store and others are located, is harmless even if there is apparent chaos. Even if the Arankar level Manos Grande comes to this world, it is estimated that he will have to die here. As for Rukia, he is still in charge of Gon-Shisa city. The time spent in this world flies quickly, and several years have passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, apart from the birth of a hanging wall named Kurosaki Ichigo, nothing important happened. Seeking Flowers OO and Urahara Kazuki's research has also made great strides in these few years. Shimo-kun, quite joyous voice echoed in the Puyuen store. The sound came out as if it were a speaker with Urahara Kazuki's photo sticker. Advertisement, thank you for a trip to the Underground Research Institute. This time, it will be successful, sigh, sounded in the shop. Little Shimo, is this the first time Kazuki has failed? Yoruichi felt helpless. During this time, she has gradually become numb to this situation. Let me think, 1, 2, 3 Shimo recalled, it seems to be the 396th time. Is this the perseverance of scientific researchers? It's amazing. Even Shimo has to admire, after hundreds of consecutive failures, he still has an excellent mentality. Okay, Yoruichi's sister, you should get out of my arms. Shihei picked up the back collar of the inner cat and took it out of his arms. I'll go to the Underground Research Institute first. Shihuan Yoruichi lay on the pillow lazily, I know meow. As she said, she yawned greatly, changed her posture, shrank into the pillow, and buried her head. Daytime is not a friendly time period for Cat's Underground Research Institute. After several years of research and transformation, the environment here seems to have undergone tremendous changes. In addition to all kinds of weird-looking devices, there are endless colorful matter liquids, solids, etc. Urahara Kazuki is wearing a white slender haori, and his head is wearing an observation device. Seeing Shimo's arrival, Urahara Kazuki waved his hands and said excitedly, Shimo-kun. This time it will definitely be successful. Compared with his excited look, Shimo looks much calmer. Relax your mind, Kazuki. It has failed hundreds of times, and there is nothing wrong with it twice. Obviously, Urahara Kazuki did not take Shimo's words to heart. He took out the weird container, like a heart, with countless Kido mantras carved on it. If you look closely, you can even see it beating faintly. The same as before. Urahara Kazuki said. Shimo heard this, took a step forward, stretched out a finger, and plunged into the heart container. The power of time gushes out at your fingertips in the unliberated state. Shimo can also speed up time or slow down time. This is also the result of his hard practice. Urahara does not require the characteristics of the power of dry time. Just place it in a fixed container, and that's it. With the influx of time, the Kido mantra on the heart container glowed red. Starting from the bottom, it gradually spreads upwards. Until the entire heart container turns red completely. Stop, Urahara Kazuki said nervously. Shimo stopped at the sound, took his finger out, and curiously said. Is this all right? His role is limited to providing energy. If there is no accident, this heart can already be stabilized in the virtual hole. It's a pity, only to slow down the hollow of the Quincy. A look of regret appeared on Urahara Kazuki's face. He knew in his heart that this was the limit he could achieve in a limited time. After 3 days of observation, Urahara Kazuki confirmed the success of the study. Later, in the Underground Research Institute, he helped Kurosaki to replace Kurosaki Ishin's power. Ishin's Shinigami ability is restored. Shimo is in the Underground Research Institute, responsible for the last insurance of the experiment. Then Yu Lingting, will you notice the fluctuation of his Ryatsu? Urahara Kazuki waved his hand without looking back, explaining. It's okay, Ryatsu's isolation-type righteousness can solve most of the problems. Seeing the words appearing on the screen in front of him, he breathed a sigh of relief. The ability to replace is successful. The power of time replaced Shinigami's power. Hollow is completely suppressed. 0 Chapter 104 Ishida Ryushin's help, ready to start planning. Advertisement. Hearing Urahara Kazuki's words, Shimo leaned in front of the screen to check. Finish? Shimo's expression is a little weird, why not that kind of complicated formula term? Urahara Kazuki sneered, doesn't it look more concise this way? Well, don't care about these details. Let's take a look at the state of Miss Genhua. Kurosaki closed his eyes tightly and lay on the operating table not far away. The virtual hole in the collarbone has been completely healed, and the overall appearance is no different from normal people. On the other hand, Kurosaki Ishin is sitting on the chair next to him, and the Ryatsu on his body is fluctuating. To regain Shinigami's power, for him, it takes a certain amount of time to adapt. He is still stable in the righteous corpse now. After a few minutes, Kurosaki really barked and woke up from his deep sleep. Miss, how do you feel? Urahara Kazuki asked. Kurosaki really stretched out his hands and looked up and down. It seems to be no different from before. After a while, Kurosaki really made a big smile appear on his face. However, thank you Shimo-kun and Mr. Urahara. If it is exactly what you said, you have saved my life. Urahara Kazuki and Shimo face each other. Well, the strength is restored. Kurosaki Isshin, who broke free of Iimukuro, got up from Ryatsu's chair. No difference from before. The surging Ryatsu is all over the body. Kurosaki Isshin, who put on the Death Tyrant again, looked a little excited. Although he does not particularly care about whether his strength is restored or not on August 20th, he can have more strength to protect his family. After all, it is excellent. In the past few years, because of his own soul, Shu often attracts Shu to come near the clinic. And Kurosaki Isshin, who has lost his power, can only wait for the rescue of Shinigami stationed, or the arrival of Kurosaki. This feeling of powerlessness is not very pleasant for Kurosaki Isshin, who was once the captain of Shinigami. Really, Kurosaki Isshin saw Kurosaki on the operating table, so he hurriedly stood up and asked. How do you feel? Kurosaki really smirked, same as before. Hearing that, Kurosaki Isshin looks at Shimo and Urahara Kazuki with grateful daylight. Stop, don't say anything if you are thankful. Say well in advance, Kongzuru will have the surname Kyōraku in the future. Shiguo was vaccinated in advance. Kurosaki Isshin let out a hearty laugh and said loudly. Haha, this is natural. As long as Shao Kong is willing, I have nothing to say here. Shimo, your kindness to Shiba's family, we will always keep in mind. At this moment, Urahara Kazuki poured cold water on the side. Now is not the time to be rejoicing. If the sanctuary is activated, the true Chattering Quincy power will still be taken away. By then, this little time alone will not be able to restrain the erosion of Hollow. Soul suicide will still happen. Hearing this, Kurosaki Isshin suddenly became nervous. What should I do? Urahara Kazuki gently knocked on the research table and made a bang. Maybe a second heart container can be made. How about the power of 2 equal parts of time? He cast his eyes on Shimo's side. Shimo thought for a while and said seriously. Acceleration and slowing down are relative, and both belong to the force of time. The plan is feasible. Urahara Kazuki's eyes lit up, and the soul of scientific research from the depths of his soul burned again. In that case, I need to prepare in advance. Shimo curled his mouth and poured a bucket of cold water over it. Use it to prepare? Just prepare 2 of the same container? It's nothing more than sending the opposite force of time into the soul. After nearly 400 times of auxiliary research, Shimo has gradually understood the principle of this research. After the power of the Quincy is taken away, the power of time can slow down Hollow's erosion to a certain extent. During that time, just repeat the steps. Urahara Kazuki's face was bitter, and she muttered. It's a pity, I just started researching, it doesn't take much time to rebuild a container. The tangled look is extremely rare in Urahara Kazuki. The black couple thanked them for leaving, and their lives were back on track again. In fact, Shimo didn't tell them about other drawbacks. But if I want to come to Kurosaki Isshin's mind, I can also imagine myself. The disappearance of the power of Kurosaki Mami's Quincy, which means that when the Holy Spirit is activated, Kurosaki will really become an ordinary human. As for how to help him restore the strength of the Quincy, it has nothing to do with Shimo. Advertisement. He has done his best to help him. The progress of the world is still going on. Shimo can't use his current strength to stop the activation of the sanctuary. Forget it, just follow the situation. Shimo exhaled and turned back to the Puyuen store. 3 years later, Kurosaki really lost the power of the Quincy. After Shimo received Urahara Kazuki's communication, he returned to the Urahara store as quickly as possible, assisting in the placement of new power. Slow down and speed up. After Urahara Kazuki collected these 2 powers of time, he looked at the heart container that was gradually reddening, and his eyes were a bit deep. Shimo-kun. Perhaps Shimo raised his head and looked at Urahara Kazuki. It was discovered that he was hesitant to speak but stopped. It's nothing, it's just a moment of emotion. Urahara Kazuki shook his head, holding the heart container and started filling it with strength. Surgery involving the soul requires extreme caution. Even Urahara Kazuki has tried many times. But Yugon Heise's soul is no different from ordinary human beings, so care must be put first. Time flies. Kurosaki Isshin waited anxiously outside. Shimo's expression was calm, and there was not much change in expression on his face. He has done everything he can do. The rest is enough for Urahara Kazuki. 3 hours later, Urahara Kazuki walked out of the institute with the same smile on his face. Isshin, the operation is complete. As you wish, Hollow suppressed and the soul returned to normal. Black Isshin expressed emotional excitement and whispered. Thanks a lot. Immediately, he turned and rushed into the institute. Urahara Kazuki looked at Shimo with a smile on his face. Shimo-kun. When will your plan start? Hearing that, Shimo's mouth rises, showing white teeth. Sure enough, I can't hide anything from you. Wait for a while. We are the last move. What happened to Shimo was nothing more than a calm episode. Time is still passing. Surgery involving the soul requires extreme caution. Even Urahara Kazuki has tried many times. But Yugon Heise's soul is no different from ordinary human beings, so care must be put first. Time flies. Kurosaki Isshin waited anxiously outside. Shimo's expression was calm, and there was not much change in expression on his face. He has done everything he can do. The rest is enough for Urahara Kazuki. 3 hours later, Urahara Kazuki walked out of the institute with the same smile on his face. Isshin, the operation is complete. As you wish. Hollow suppressed and the soul returned to normal. Black Isshin expressed emotional excitement and whispered. Thanks a lot. Immediately, he turned and rushed into the institute. Urahara Kazuki looked at Shimo with a smile on his face. Shimo-kun. When will your plan start? Hearing that, Shimo's mouth rises, showing white teeth. Sure enough, I can't hide anything from you. Wait for a while. We are the last move. What happened to Shimo was nothing more than a calm episode. Time is still passing, but one thing was beyond his expectation. After helping Kurosaki really stabilized his soul, 1 month later, Kurosaki Isshin took a person to the Puyuen store. Queen's killer? Shimo looked at the man in front of him, a look of confusion appeared on his face. Short silver hair, with a pair of expensive-looking glasses hanging from the bridge of the nose, dark blue double pupils, and that expensive costume. Ishida Ryushin? Shimo asked his guest. Ishida Ryushin nodded and said, I'm here this time to ask Mr. Shimo and Mr. Urahara to take action to treat my wife Katakiri Hei. Hearing that, Shimo looked at Urahara Kazuki, but he nodded. As long as the two can be treated, no matter what you ask me to do. Ishida Ryushin raised his head, his eyes firm. This kind of thing, you can find Kazuki. Shimo decisively tossed the pod to Urahara Kazuki. Katakiri Hei is really different from Kurosaki. Advertisement. The former is a mixed-blood quintessential, while the latter is a pure-blooded quintessential in the true sense. If it were not for the infection of the whiteness and infecting Mommy Kurosaki's soul, she would not be robbed of her power by the sanctuary. Moreover, its soul has undergone a different change under the infection of virtual whiteness. Shimo has no good way to deal with this. Such things can only be entrusted to professionals. Hearing this, Ishida Ryugen turned his gaze to Urahara Kazuki. At this time, Urahara Kazuki was touching his chin, thinking seriously. After a while, he spoke. Mr. Long Xian, I cannot guarantee this. But I will try my best. Hearing this, Ishida Ryushin was overjoyed and hurriedly thanked him. Thanks to Mr. Urahara first. Sometimes in the impression, this Ishida Ryugen who has always appeared in a calm image. At this time, because of his wife, he will appear gaff. I have to make him feel a little sigh. This is probably the power of emotion. Perhaps, Katakiri Hei and Ishida Ryushin are together, and they are not always together. Human hearts are all flesh-grown. After such a long time, even if it's a stone, it's necessary to breathe out were. But for Urahara Kazuki, this does not seem to be a bad thing. The soul of scientific research that has just been extinguished is reburning. He devoted himself to research and treatment enthusiastically. 3 days later, Urahara Kazuki appeared in front of Shimo. His expression was a bit hopeless. Kazuki, what's your face? Shimo surprised. Even if there is no cure, you shouldn't do it like this, right? Urahara Kazuki shook his head, his expression sullen. It's not that there is no way, but a solution has been found. Shimo was puzzled. Isn't this right? Find a solution, shouldn't it? Wait, the solution won't be the same as before, right? Urahara Kazuki nodded with tears, his face was bitter. Because of the lack of the strength of the Quincy, his body became weaker and weaker. In the final analysis, you still need strength to stabilize your soul. You only need to add new forces, and that's it. The reason for his frustration is because of the burning soul of scientific research, and there is nowhere to vent it. It's like you download the 100 grams resource, then go home at night and find that it is the Blu-ray version of the news broadcast. Urahara Kazuki feels this way now. Don't worry about that face. Shimo urged, solve the problem first. Repeat the previous steps again, but the corresponding power is replaced by the power of space. There is no virtual power in Katakiri's soul. It is estimated that the power of time may not be able to bear it. It turns out that Urahara Kazuki's brain is as good as ever. Katakiri Hei returned to normal, and Urayan Kazuki and Shimo also reaped the gratitude and trust from Ishida Ryushin. After this incident, Puyuen store restored its former calm. The chaos in this world is still going on. Until another 5 years passed, new information came from Soul Society. The new Ryatsu detector was invented successfully. Large quantities of Ryatsu detectors were sent to Shinigami, who was stationed in the world. The chaos has officially begun to be put down. Puyuen Store 0.0 Store. Shimo looked at the same object in his hand as the previous probe, with a strange expression. This thing took Kuretsuchi Miyuri more than 10 years? His head was gnawed by Manos Grande. He threw it to Urahara Kazuki, who had returned from the underground space, and concentrated on cat and imaginary behavior. At this time, Shimo has a black cat on his left that keeps purring and a green fur on his right, Arankar. Urahara Kazuki caught the Ryotsu detector, checked it a little, and said, "It's his style. At the level of Kuretsuchi Mayuri, it can be done in a week at most." Urahara Kazuki returned the detector to Shimo and asked, "3 days later, it just happens to be the night of the full moon. Then I will start preparing for Chian." As soon as the voice fell, the black cat on Shimo's left hand, with his ears shaking, seemed to want to make some comments. With Urahara Kazuki's departure, Shimo also released the hand that pressed the black cat's head. The voice of Shihuan Yoruichi rang in the shop. If nothing else, this guy should want to use this research to search for more scientific research expenses. As the boss of his former good friend, Urahara Kazuki knows the benefits of dry cocoon very well. "When are you going to start entering the game, Shimo-kun?" Two restless and kind guys. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. Urahara Kazuki still smiles, whispering. A clear look appeared on Shimo's face, and he nodded. Shimo pressed his head down, thought for a moment, and said seriously. Chapter 105 Familiar Characters, Unchanging Plot, Advertisement. Karakura Town, in the early hours of the morning. At night, the moonlight hung high. Hinamori Momo looked sternly at the prompt in the communicator, muttering to himself. Why is there such a high Ryotsu fluctuation suddenly burst out at this time? Shimo-kun seems to have gone to Shisa City in the afternoon to suppress the new chaos. It seems that I was the only one to solve it. Hinamori Momo stood above the telephone pole, looked at the virtual location displayed in the Ryotsu detector, and cast Shunpo forward. As it continues to approach, the response of the Ryotsu detector has become more violent. Ryotsu of this level seems to have the level of Manos Grande. The intricate architecture makes Hinamori Momo's footsteps speed up subconsciously. If it is hidden near here, it will inevitably cause a lot of casualties. During her time in Karakura Town, this situation has never happened before in her jurisdiction. Before, not even now, I can't shame the 5th Division, let alone shame Captain Eisen. Hinamori Momo gritted his teeth and accelerated Shunpo's speed even more. However, before she arrived at a private clinic, the virtual Ryotsu suddenly disappeared. How come? A surprised look appeared on Hinamori Momo's face. How could Ryotsu, who had been sensed, disappear suddenly? She subconsciously took out the Ryotsu detector and found that it did not give any Ryotsu prompts. Exactly, what happened? I don't know why. Hinamori Momo looked at the clinic in front of him, feeling uneasy in his heart. She has a hunch that the Manos Grande who hides Ryotsu is near here. Hidden in a human building. Hinamori Momo guessed in her heart that she stepped lightly on the edge of the open window. In the room, a bad boy with orange hair looked at the scene in front of him with a surprised expression. What the hell? A thief? Hinamori Momo didn't care about the humans in the room, and she in the state of Shinigami 14 would not be discovered by humans at all. However, this time, it was a mistake. The sudden strong wind behind made Hinamori subconsciously use Kido. One of Bakudo is stuffed. The orange-haired boy who flew into the air, his hands were instantly bound by the sudden force, and he was no longer balanced, and fell directly to the ground. Damn it. Who are you? The orange-haired boy is like a dehydrated fish, struggling constantly on the floor, twisting back and forth. Why come into my house through the window? A thief. A hint of displeasure appeared on Hinamori Momo's face. Although it is surprised that you can see me, it's really rude. My name is Hinamori Momo and I am a Shinigami, outside the window, above the towering building. Shimo and Urahara Kazuki stood under the moonlight, watching this scene in front of them. Oh, Shimo-kun, everything seems to be going according to your plan. Urahara Kazuki has a weird voice. I don't think so. Shimo looked calm and said, it took me a lot of effort to rush the imaginary here. Also, before the plan is fully developed. Say such affirmative words, it is easy to be beaten in the face. Urahara Kazuki laughed but did not speak and did not continue to answer. As for Shimo's plan, he also only learned about it a few years ago. According to the Shinigami girl who appears in Kurosaki Ichigo's room now, it seems that he has been in the layout since 10 years ago. Boom, while the two were talking, fighting broke out. Hidden Ryotsu's emptiness stretched out his arm from the wall and hit Hinamori Momo's body suddenly. The terrifying speed and power left Hinamori Momo's head blank for a while. How can it be? Such a powerful imaginary Hinamori Momo ran straight into the wall, blasting a huge pothole. Hu-yi the unconscious roar, like a spider-like imaginary, peeked out all the body shapes from the wall. At this time, its Ryotsu completely broke out, this kind of staff pressure. Hinamori Momo's expression was unusually shocked, his right arm dropped weakly, and blood was constantly leaking from it. It's not Manos Grande, but Ryotsu is already approaching the seed officer infinitely. No, I can't shame Captain Eisen, the chaos will end immediately. The area I am in charge of, there must be no accidents. Advertisement. She gritted her teeth and stretched out her left hand. The 31 red cannon of Hado. The crimson flames gathered, and then whizzed turbulently towards the spider imaginary. Roar. When he carried this red cannon in the front, the spider uttered a painful cry. The mask on its face became more and more furious. Realizing that he might not be the opponent of the injured Shinigami, he turned his gaze to the orange-haired human teenager blankly. Hiss one, the blood basin opened wide, and white smoke lingered. The instinct from the virtual tells it that it can evolve itself if it swallows the soul in front of it. Get out of the way, Hinamori Momo made a warning sound. However, as a human, how can Kurosaki Ichigo escape under such an attack? When the imaginary appeared, Hinamori Momo also realized one thing. The human teenager in front of him is definitely not an ordinary person. Its own soul has a spiritual concentration far exceeding that of a normal human being. The purpose of this spider is definitely the impolite guy in front of you. When the mouth of the blood basin approached, Hinamori mobilized Shunpo to hold Zanpakutō in his left hand to reach Kurosaki Ichigo. Breathe, with blood splashing, Hinamori looked at the sharp blade that pierced his body with some horror. It turns out that your goal is still me. The spider void in front of him, a bright color appeared in his hollow eyes. The state it showed before was just to deceive Hinamori Momo. Hinamori Momo collapsed weakly on the road, blood oozing from the wound in his abdominal cavity. Has it ended? Hinamori Momo looked a bit unwilling. I haven't returned to Soul Society yet to see Captain Eisen again. If I die here, I'm too reconciled. She no longer has the ability to fight again. It was the orange-haired boy who still looked fearlessly at the imaginary one. Suddenly, a gleam of light flashed in her eyes. Perhaps, there is a last resort. Hey, rude fellow. Kurosaki Ichigo turned his head blankly and looked at Hinamori Momo, who fell on the ground. There is one last way to defeat the phantom in front of you. Hinamori Momo barely supported Zanpakutō in his hand. Any solution? Kurosaki Ichigo asked subconsciously. That is, you become Shinigami. Hinamori Momo's expression was distorted because of the pain. K this Zanpakutō into your chest. After that, I will input Shinigami's abilities into your body. Shimo-kun. Urahara Kazuki looked down at the battle scene below and smiled. What do you think this kid would choose? Facing his question, Shi-wei raised his mouth and said in a low voice. You will meet a Shinigami with a great talent. As soon as his voice fell, a dazzling spiritual light emerged from the ground, illuminating the entire street like daylight. What a brilliant light! Urahara Kazuki's expression gradually calmed down. Quickmaster, Shinigami, and the mixed power of the virtual. Today's people are amazed, Shimo said. So, mixed blood is the most popular. Kazuki, do you want to try the power after Hollow? Hearing that, Urahara Kazuki lowered his fisherman hat and whispered. Your existence is the biggest paradox of this statement. Below, a new battle begins. Kurosaki Ichigo's Zanpakutō is bigger than Shimo expected. The broad blade looks very outrageous as for fighting skills or something. On weekdays, Isshin doesn't train much. After regaining Shinigami's abilities, the level of Kurosaki Isshin's sneak attack rose, and Kurosaki Ichigo's life became more difficult. A few minutes later, the spider was split into two from its head, and the spirit escaped. Kurosaki Ichigo becomes the first battle after Shinigami, and it's over. However, at this moment, terrible oppression descended from the sky. Kurosaki Ichigo and Hinamori Momo, who have just gone through the battle, will not be able to react in the future because this powerful oppression instantly loses consciousness. Perfect ending. Shimo quietly took back his Ryotsu on the high platform. He jumped down from a high altitude and landed steadily on the street. And in Kurosaki Hospital, a figure also walked out. It's really tragic. Advertisement. Kurosaki Isshin scratched his short black hair. This is really going to be redecorated. After hearing this, Shimo smiled and said, I don't worry about my son, but care about his house. Has been compounded to no cutting board. Sure enough, isn't it his own? Kurosaki Isshin embraces his arms and looks seriously at Kurosaki Ichigo lying on the ground. If it weren't for the fact that this guy looks very similar to Kyan, I would really think about it. Shimo. 2 inches, is this a brain circuit that a normal person should have? Shimo only discovered at this time that even if Kurosaki Isshin regained the power of Shinigami, he was going farther and farther on the road of amusement. It's a sad thing. Shimo shook his head and sighed. Black Isshin's expression is blank. He didn't hear Shimo's words. Wait, Shimo, explain to me. Go, Kazuki. Shimo mentioned Hinamori Momo on the ground, cast Shunpo and disappeared in place. Urahara Kazuki also glanced at Kurosaki Isshin with some pity. A long sigh contains countless complicated meanings. Black Isshin looked at the back of the two of them leaving, scratching his head, his expression blank. What do these two guys mean? Puyuen Store, Underground Research Institute. Do you really want to put Hogyoku in her soul? Urahara Kazuki asked with a solemn expression. You know, Aizen's gaze has been stuck in this world. Copied to Yang cutting board, Kurosaki's really boisterous anomaly has already aroused his attention. 820. Shimo nodded and explained, where does the motivation come from without pressure? At that time, I will just leave the battle to me. Even if there is a paper leak in the plan, it is not without room for maneuver. Upon hearing this, Urahara Kazuki made up his mind. Astral Foreign Body Implantation Technology, start. When Hinamori Momo woke up from his coma, he found himself in an ordinary house. Simple decoration, looks no special features, various goods are piled up on the ground. Wait. Hinamori Momo found something wrong. When she subconsciously got up and wanted to take a closer look, she cried out because of pain. Guest, are you awake? A dull voice, ringing in the room. Hinamori Momo turned his head suspiciously and looked at the sturdy middle-aged man in front of him. You are? She felt that the middle-aged man in front of her looked familiar. The clerk at the Puyuen store holds Ginger Tessai. At this moment, the cloth curtain was opened. A head in a fisherman hat came in from outside. Yo, hello guest. Looking at your puzzled expression, you must have a detailed discussion, right? Underneath is the owner of this Puyuen store, Urahara Kazuki. When Hinamori Momo heard the name, his pupils shrank and whispered. Copied to Yang Cutting Board, Puyuen Kazuki. After discussing a detailed discussion, Hinamori Momo can also be regarded as getting rid of the existing situation. Because he was fighting with Shu, he gave Shinigami's abilities to a human boy. She was so injured that she passed out in a coma without Ryatsu's support. The man who called himself Urahara Kazuki saved her and put her soul in the corpse. In short, this is how it happened. Urahara Kazuki smiled on the face of a profiteer cultivated in this world and said, healing, righteousness and soul stability, a series of expenses, in total, are 100,000 Jiaozi. Soul Society. Number 1 Team House, Captain's Office. Because of the Ryatsu detector of Captain Kuratsuchi Mayuri, the present turmoil has temporarily stabilized. Shimo calmly reported the situation in this world. But to be conservative, it's best to observe for a while. Yamamoto Yuanlu Yinweej opened his eyes, and Fen's voice sounded in the office. The old man understands. The 4th Division Deputy Captain Kyōraku Shimo, your mission ends here. As for the task of observation, Shiba Kyan, Deputy Captain of the 13th Division, will be in charge. The newly established country fights the new chapter 106 different flower arrangements. Eisen is in action. Advertisement Soul Society, the 4th Division Team House. Shimo, who is back here, has a pleasant expression. Shimo found something wrong and whispered in a low voice. In other words, as a deputy captain who is afraid of subordinates, I have received wide acclaim in Jingling Court. But why didn't a team member come to greet me? In the middle, what's wrong with the chapter? As he went deep into the team house, he finally recalled today's days. Monthly team flower arrangement contest. Shimo's eyes suddenly brightened. The team member who won the flower arrangement contest can be spared a month of work. Although every time the champion is Sister Wa. Although Shinigami have a long lifespan, this does not mean that they can work endlessly like a machine. Appropriate relaxation is also a very good adjustment for these Shinigami. For example, the flower arrangement contest held by the 4th Division every month, the aristocratic gathering of the 6th Division, the wine tasting held by the 8th Division, and the competition of the 11th Division. Well, the last one doesn't count. Compared with other teams, the 11th team is more like a fighter without modification. In a long career, the death of a team seems to be the best ending for the members of the first team. Because of a failure, I rejected the artistic bacteria from flower arrangements. Shimo walked to the second training ground, where most of the Ryatsu players of the 4th Division stayed here. The number 2 training ground is an open-air venue, and the auditorium will be surrounded by a semi-enclosed style. In the middle is an extremely spacious playground. At this time, the venue was not as common as other games, and there was a lot of people. On the contrary, almost all the team members are holding their breath and watching the performances of the players on the stage quietly. In each booth, there is a team member who is doing his own artistic creation. Shimo hides his own Ryatsu and displays the number 26 Bakudo bent light-handedly, hiding his figure together. He is still very curious about the dry flower arrangement competition. Moreover, Shimo wants to prove his artistic talent through a competition, which is also excellent. After determining the location of Unohana Retsu, Shimo can choose a corner location that is more remote from her. Realizing that there didn't seem to be too many people paying attention, he knocked an unknown poor team member with a hand knife and fainted directly. After that, Shimo took up the opponent's booth and started the artistic creation of the second flower arrangement competition. It's the subject matter that needs to be conceived carefully. Shimo frowned slightly looking at the patterns left on the booth. The Shinigami team player seems to have a very open brain circuit. With gentian grass as the theme, make an artistic creation praising the quality of Sister Wa. What a flatterer! Shimo was shocked. He has never realized that there are such talents in the 4th Division. With a quick catch, he knocked out an outstanding wizard from the game. It's a pity, I can only blame your bad luck. Shimo glanced into the corner and shook his head regrettably. Try the flower arranging techniques you learned in the world. He crossed his fingers together and stretched his arms forward. The variety of flowers is quite complete, Shimo said, officially starting his own creation. For more than 10 years in this world, he is not that he is immersed in the extravagant life of cats and cats every day. While experiencing the world, I also learned a lot of useful skills. Of course, it's purely idle. the practice of sword meditation can only be done once a day. So Shimo has a lot of free time as for the chaotic task. There is no need to mention things that can be solved in a few minutes. In the venue, it was still silent, but as a team member on the audience stage found a familiar figure in the corner. The noisy sound, like a stone still in the lake, spreads in an instant. Ovum Jawali, who focuses on creation, frowned slightly when he heard the noise coming from his ears. The temperature in the venue dropped abruptly by several grades. For a while, everyone chattered like a cicada. As time passed, the flower arrangement contest was gradually coming to an end. Following the high platform, a clear bell rang. Time up. The voice of the team member in charge of timing, under the influence of the Kido mantra, spread throughout the venue. The players participating in the competition stopped their movements. Shimo's brows frowned from beginning to end, and finally relaxed. Some Shaolang is too difficult for this subject. The variety of flowers is quite complete, Shimo said, officially starting his own creation. For more than 10 years in this world, he is not that he is immersed in the extravagant life of cats and cats every day. While experiencing the world, I also learned a lot of useful skills. Advertisement, of course, it's purely idle. The practice of sword meditation can only be done once a day. So Shimo has a lot of free time as for the chaotic task. There is no need to mention things that can be solved in a few minutes. In the venue, it was still silent. But as a team member on the audience stage found a familiar figure in the corner. The noisy sound, like a stone still in the lake, spreads in an instant. Ovum Jawali, who focuses on creation, frowned slightly when he heard the noise coming from his ears. The temperature in the venue dropped abruptly by several grades. For a time, everyone chattered like a cicada. As time passed, the flower arrangement contest was gradually coming to an end. Following the high platform, a clear bell rang. Time up. The voice of the team member in charge of timing, under the influence of the Kido mantra, spread throughout the venue. The players participating in the competition stopped their movements. Shimo's brows frowned from beginning to end, and finally relaxed. Some Shaolang is too difficult for this subject. If it wasn't for the time acceleration to be increased to 10 times, it might not be possible to complete it. The referees of flower arranging competitions are generally held by the last champion, runner-up and runner-up. In other words, the egg flower is both a player and a referee, and it may also be a shady. At the beginning of the judging, Unohana Retsu had already noticed the smiling Shimo in the booth. Originally, she didn't care too much about Shimo's participation in the competition. The previous suspension of him was just a joke. But when he noticed the rather colorful flower clusters on the booth in front of Shimo, there was still a hint of surprise in the eyes of Egg Huoli. Shimo-kun's flower arrangement level seems to have been greatly improved. Egg Huoli whispered. Katetsu Izan beside him was surprised in some introverted eyes. Really, what a surprise. The judgment begins. According to the order of the booth, Shimo's location should belong to the last batch. And Unohana Retsu also deliberately put it at the end. Shimo-kun. With a gentle smile, Unohana Retsu stopped at the opposite side of the booth and stared at Shimo. In his eyes full of laughter, there was a trace of unspoken emotion. The waves converge, and the mood is slightly concealed. Unohana Retsu focused on the booth, Shimo's work. In the flower arrangement work in front of me, purple is the main body, the jagged flowers are placed in the flower vessel, and the zigzag cyan color circles the gentian flowers. Kazi Huali's expression was a bit stunned. The work in front of her has already exceeded her expectations. Although it is not the top flower arranging art she has ever seen, it is also a very good boutique. Next to him, Katetsu Izan and another female team member Shinigami also showed surprise on their faces. Regarding the so-called flower arrangement level of his own deputy captain, the team members on the field know well. Even try to avoid mentioning this matter in front of Shimo. But it was so bad that it was banned by Unohana Retsu, and it was Sasori's Rababa, the only one. However, the flower arrangement in front of me is definitely a work of art. No matter whether it is from the order of flowers or the structure between flowers and flowers, no problem can be found. Does this work have a name? Eggflower lies softly. Shimo's mouth raised slightly, and he believed. Kendo. The words fell, and the flowers on the booth suddenly opened. Ultimate sword intent is as clear as the spring water, flowing down the gentian flower. Very good work of art. Knocking on the side of wall lie with a smile, UFA mixed saint. When the first sentence was spoken, Katetsu Izan nodded in agreement. When she was just about to echo her point of view and express her own opinion, she heard the next two sentences. A gentle voice rang beside her. Is this your 8th chapter, Shimo-kun? I like it very much. Katetsu Izan's neck, like a gear that hasn't been oiled for a long time, makes a stiff turning sound. And many more. What did I hear? It must have been too tired from work recently and hallucinated. It's also possible that Shimo-kun's Ryatsu is too strong, causing hearing pressure. Hearing Unohana Retsu's words, Shimo's expression is also very wonderful. Colorful Madara, various colors, as long as you like it. Shimo replied stiffly. Advertisement snapped. With a crisp sound, Shimo and Inori looked in the direction of the sound subconsciously. However, it was discovered that Kotetsu Izan chose her cheek and smiled awkwardly. After the two of them looked away, Kotetsu Izan rubbed his face, hissed, and said in his heart, "It hurts, it seems that there is no hallucination." But this she still couldn't believe what was happening before her, and she always felt that if there was a problem with her, or there was a problem with the world. Anyway, there must be something wrong. The captain, although she has a gentle personality, but never said under Kotetsu Izan's horrified gaze, Unohana Retsu slowly stretched out her hand and stretched it towards Shimo, gently moving. And many more. "Captain, what are you doing?" Kotetsu Izan yelled in his heart, his cheeks flushed, it seemed to foreshadow something unfavorable to watch. "Shimo-kun." Kotetsu Izan's gentle voice pulled Kotetsu Izan back from her fantasy. "Can this be given to me?" Kotetsu Izan looked at something a little bit astonished. It turned out to be this flower arrangement. I don't know why, when she didn't see what she wanted to see, she was a little bit lost in her heart. What a pity. Shimo didn't know Yenjiwa's thoughts for a while. However, Jianqian's daily exchange experience, he still replied in the affirmative. "Of course, this was originally for you." Hearing that, Unohana Retsu's face bends a nice arc at the corner of his mouth, and said with a smile, "Thank you, Shimo-kun." Kotetsu Izan no longer knows what words to use to describe his mood at the moment. I always feel that this time the flower arrangement competition seems to have undergone many changes. First, he was promoted to the master of flower arranging art from Shimo's deputy captain. This work is no less inferior to me. However, the captain's words opened up a new world for himself. "My view of the world has been impacted," Kotetsu Izan whispered. Uziwali glanced at her with a weird expression, but didn't say anything. In this flower arrangement competition, Shimo's work won first place. Whether there is a black box operation in it, it is not known. Anyway, the team members of the 4th Division are all aware that the captain in the flower arrangement game has 1 vote and 1 vote. Shimo returned to the 4th Division, and life returned to peace again. Everything seems to be back to the past. However, Shimo, lying on his back in the sun lounger, was clear. The gears of the world have already begun to turn. Because the present world imaginary chaos has been suppressed, the number of imaginary ones has been drastically reduced. And with the development of the new Ryatsu detector from the Technology Development Bureau, the money is good, everything in this world seems to have returned to the previous state again. Shinigami, who was stationed in this world, was gradually transferred back to Soul Society. Leave the 13th Division alone in this world, carrying out their own tasks. 1 month later, Shiba Kyan also had to return to the squad to act as acting captain because of Jashiro Yukitaki's health. However, with the gradual return of the Shinigami team members, various problems appeared. The deputy captain of the 5th Division seemed to be out of touch. The 5th Division team house. Eisen Kuyusuke has a calm expression, with his hands in front of his abdomen, and the broad Captain Haori, the color of the color, hangs down. "Yin, is the investigation clear?" In the calm voice, no waves can be heard. As his voice sounded, in the room, a figure in a black robe appeared in the air. Under the black kabuto hat, the light purple short hair naturally hangs down, and the slender eyes are slightly narrowed, and the blue light is faintly visible. "Master Eisen, I have already investigated. Everything is as you expected." Hearing this, a smile appeared on Eisen's face, walked to the window and looked at the sky of Yulingting. Sure enough, there was a little problem. However, it doesn't matter, the plan will continue as usual. Since it has been confirmed, you can go back first. Ichimaru Jin's attitude at this time is very different from usual, he whispered. "Yes, Lord Eisen." With the coverage of the electric light, Ichimaru Jin's figure disappeared into the air again. Eisen still looks at the sky, his eyes are deep, and he whispers softly. The sky of Lingting remains as boring as usual. Chapter 107. The 46 rooms that were destroyed, secretly ordered the guilt. Advertisement time flies. 2 months have passed since Shimo returned to the Wandering Palace. Urahara Kazuki handles the situation in this world at its sole discretion. After more than 10 years of getting along, he still trusts Urahara Kazuki. On this day, as usual, he is going to the general ambulance for daily inspections. As the deputy captain, you can't just do nothing. This can be regarded as a little job that Shimo finds for himself, and it is definitely not because Shiba Soraha is in the general emergency room. However, as soon as he stepped out of the door of his room, he saw Kashima Yusuke walking towards him. "Master Shimo." Kashima Yusuke also just returned from this world some time ago. Under his leadership, the 6th and 7th Ambulance Squad only lost 1 team member, so Shunli has become a task of suppressing tiger chaos in many cities. Shimo raised his brow and saw the envelope he was holding. "A letter from the 12th Squad," Kashima Yusuke said excitedly. Shimo took the letter and found that it contained various Kido mantras and a special seal developed by the Technology Development Bureau. Identify Ryatsu, automatically destroy the corners of his mouth raised, and he smiled. Kuretsuchi Mayuri really has this skill, so he directly contacted me with the sky. After all, this guy still wants to show off his invention. Obviously, Shimo sees him thoroughly. After pouring a little Ryatsu into the envelope opened quietly. A piece of white paper slipped out of it. Come on to the 12th division? Shimo frowned slightly. What does this guy want to do? The task of patrolling the comprehensive rescue center is left to you. Kashima Yusuke. He backhanded his task and skillfully assigned it to Yusuke Kashima. Yes, Lord Shimo. In the next moment, Shimo is the starting step and disappears in place. For Kuratsuchi Miyuri, who has worked with him many times, Shimo still pays more attention to it. At the very least, this guy has never made a similar joke to him. Therefore, Kuratsuchi Miyuri must have something important when looking for him this time. The second division, in the Technology Development Bureau. At the bottom of the Ryatsu sensor screen, Kuratsuchi Miyuri stared at the word 823 that appeared on the screen, smiling strangely. Shimo-kun. The present city under your jurisdiction, Korakucho. There is a problem again. As his voice fell, Shimo's figure also happened to appear near the sensor. Shimo looks to the top of the screen, marking the area of Karakura Town, which has changed from white to red. But the alarm under the instrument has been hammered out. Looking at its posture, it should be a good thing Kuratsuchi Miyuri did. You came to me because of this mess? Shimo's expression was a bit disdainful. The plan proceeded as usual, and there was no follow-up. Kuratsuchi Miyuri showed a little bit of astonishment on his face. He knocked on the instrument table under his hand and said in a hurry. Shimo-kun. According to the warning, Manos Grande appeared again in Karakura Town, the last time it was at the Jillian level. Hearing this, Shimo spread his hands out and said. Then what? Could it be possible for me to run into this world to encircle Jillian, right? This matter, isn't it the work of the 13th Division? Don't forget, I don't need to be responsible for the tasks in this world anymore. Shimo's tone was somewhat indifferent. In this case, you should be the first to contact Shiba Kaien, the deputy captain of the 13th Division. Kuratsuchi Miyuri's distorted expression. The effect of this incident does not seem to threaten Shimo. Just when he was about to speak again, the red area on the screen of the Ryatsu sensor suddenly changed back to white. What's the situation? Kuratsuchi Miyuri's perceptive power of ordinary people perceives something unusual. Shinigami, who works in front of the instrument, spoke extremely fast. Ryatsu of Manos Grande in Karakura Town has disappeared. It seems to have been wiped out by a certain Shinigami. Advertisement, however, in the present world, all the deputy captains have been withdrawn, and none of the officials stayed. Yuli realized that something was wrong. The corners of Shimo's mouth rose up, and he didn't speak up. If nothing else, the appearance of Manos Grande is not an accident. And it's also not the Bia Puyuen store's waiters who took action to solve. This is clearly the record of Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishida Uryu. Ishida Yulong's character doesn't seem to have changed much. Shimo secretly said in his heart. Jia Jia. A strange laugh came from Kuratsuchi Miyuri's mouth, and the golden teeth looked a little bit of joy. I think it's better to investigate this situation in detail. Shimo shrugged and said indifferently, it's up to you. But remember that I am only the deputy captain of the 4th Division. This kind of thing has nothing to do with me. You can go to Shiba Kaien, or report directly to the captain. By the way, that research report is very good, and I look forward to our next cooperation. When the voice fell, Shimo had disappeared in place. Kuratsuchi Miyuri looked at Shimo's original location, gritted his teeth, and his expression gradually became crazy. It's a disgusting guy. Obviously, he doesn't know how popular he is in Lingting. The Technical Development Bureau began to investigate this matter. It was night, the moonlight was shrouded by dark clouds, and the moonlight was invisible, and the cold wind whizzed, and there was a trace of cold air in the air. The team members who patrolled the inner court of Tillington guarded the inner court without changing their faces. In front, a figure in a black cloak walked towards them. However, this group of team members seemed to be blind to this body film and television, and their hair passed by. Under the cloak, Eisen walked freely in the inner court, trampling on the so-called rules. Today, his destination is the central underground chamber of Lingting. There, 40 sages and 6 judges from Soul Society gathered. The barriers and Kido traps in front of the chamber are for Eisen. He crossed it 100 times and talked into the interior of the chamber. Eisen looked at the arrogant Central 46 on stage, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised. He raised his hand and slowly took off the kabuto cap from his head. At the same time, Kido bent light was lifted from the whole body. Seeing a figure in a black robe appearing in the chamber, Central 46 collectively realized that something was wrong. Who are you and why are you trespassing into the underground chamber? The captain of Gode 13's 5th Division, Eisen Yusuke? Does those who ignore the rules want to be punished by us? In the Great Hell, you are all imprisoned. Although I was a little panicked, everyone in the chamber didn't seem to take Eisen too seriously. In their view, they are the heaven of the Yulingting, in control of everything in the Yulingting. But these people soon realized that it was wrong. Why did he shout for so long, but no guard came to the chamber? After discovering this, the temperature in the chamber suddenly dropped several levels. The 46 rooms, who were used to sitting on high places, had gradually dulled their heads. In the long trial career, they enjoy the fun of power, but it is the bloodiest law in the world. Eisen, leave the chamber as soon as possible before I really get angry. Above the chamber, one of the judges said loudly. Otherwise, what is waiting for you will be the hell of the 10,000 years. Eisen looked up and smiled slightly. The last neigh of insects is still very noisy. The knife light lit up, reflecting the horrified faces of the sages and judges in the chamber. Pouting. Blood splashed and poured on the body of the judge next to him. The warm touch finally made the 46 lofty rooms realize one thing. Where's the guard? Guard, you actually killed Sanchuan Inquisitor. Eisen, are you going to rebel? Are all the guards dead? Why didn't they come to protect us? The roaring sound resounded in the chamber. The bodies of the sages and judges were trembling when death lay in front of them. As if the world had collapsed. These existences that have always been above all have finally realized the existence of fear at this moment. It turns out that death is not far away. The Zanpakutō on Eisen's waist opens and closes and is slowly pulled out. Seeing this scene, the expressions on the faces of the sages and judges became more and more distorted. Advertisement: they tried to use the weak Kido to stop Eisen's terrible behavior. However, the power gap like an abyss makes all their actions useless. Kyōraku Shunsui showed a look of horror. Eisen slowly said. Explaining more with insects will only waste your tongue. What's more, there are many insects whose minds have been corrupted. Eisen raised his arms gently. Kyōraku Shunsui blade reflected the cold light. The chamber is even more noisy. Cursing, crying for help, begging for mercy. Kyōraku Shunsui slowly fell, and all the voices were cut off, and peace was restored in the chamber. Tap, tap. The steady footsteps sounded in the chamber. Eisen walked to the door, looked around at his masterpiece. A smile appeared on his face again. The quiet underground chamber is the picture I admire. At the same time, in the 4th Division team house, Shimo sits cross-legged on the futon, and Zanpakutō is placed horizontally on his knees, ending today's practice. Just when he got up, he suddenly heard a rapid knock on the door outside. Shimo. Hearing this sound, Shimo realized that the knocker outside was Shiba Kyan. It's so late, what is this guy doing? Shimo opened the door and saw a worried face. Now, Karakura town has a problem. Shiba Kyan's voice is swift and seems to be from Shunpo all the way. Shimo frowned slightly and asked, what question did Karakura stare at? Shiba Kyan took a few breaths and explained, do you still know Hinamori Momo, the deputy captain of the previous 5th Division? Shimo nodded, his expression was a little surprised. Why, is it possible to find it? Shiba Kyan nodded and said. The news from the Technology Development Bureau was that in Karakura town, the current coordinate city, the trail of Hinamori Momo, the deputy captain of the 5th Division, was discovered. Regarding this, Shimo seemed a bit shocked on the surface. But in fact, there is not much fluctuation in his heart. If it were not for his previous task of suppressing false chaos, it is estimated that Shiba Haidong would directly report to Captain Yamamoto. Shimo, look at this. Shiba Kyan asked Shimo what he meant. Just report it as it is. The discovery of the missing deputy captain is not a trivial matter. Shimo was decisive about this. As for the responsibility of monitoring his dereliction of duty, they are all minor problems. Shiba Kyan was taken aback for a moment and then nodded. I see. In the early morning of the next day, a piece of news spread among the travelers. After a detailed investigation by the Technical Development Bureau of the 12th Division, Hinamori Momo, the deputy captain of the 5th Division, was discovered in this world. It was originally a thankful thing. But good fortune and misfortune are always good. Hinamori Momo assigned his spiritual power to the human beings in this world. This has seriously violated Yulingting's regulations. After a cursory glance, he looked at Unohana Retsu, just as he was about to speak. As for the 5th Division, the atmosphere is even more dull. In the 10th Division, the chill was freezing near the captain's office, and ordinary team members couldn't even approach it. This is a secret order issued by Central 46, please check it out. It should be about the guilt of the 5th Division deputy captain, right? As the verdict, Central 46 can adjudicate all crimes in Soul Society. After the verdict is issued, it will be sent to the first team or other teams in the form of a secret order. Unohana Retsu asked first. The incident caused an uproar in Yulingting. At the same time, after handing over the secret order to Shimo, he immediately left the 4th Division. Shimo and Oino Ware looked at the emissary in front of them with different expressions. Shimo didn't hesitate to open the secret order. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. In the 3rd Division, the deputy captain Kira Izuru went to the captain's office as soon as possible, looking for Ichimaru Jin to confirm the authenticity of the news. Captain Unohana Retsu, Deputy Captain Kyōraku Shimo. The 4th Division team house in the captain's office. Oath is the existence of conveying secret orders for Central 46, they have always appeared in the form of a tightly bound body. Chapter 108 Secret Order issued, hunted in the world. Advertisement. A follow-up order issued by Central 46. Shimo casually crushed the secret order into animal powder and threw it into the trash can. Seeing this scene, Eggflower Lie's eyes flickered, but he didn't say much. For others, the Supreme Central 46 does not seem to be taken seriously by Shimo. However, Egg Huoli had the same idea about this. This is the unprecedented villain of Soul Society. How can you care about the rules and regulations of Central 46? I have been stationed in this world for many years because I was responsible for suppressing false chaos. Shimo explained, strictly speaking, I am responsible for the Hinamori Momo incident. So this time I went to this world to capture Hinamori Momo, and I and the 5th Division Captain Eisen, Kuyusuke will be in charge. Eggflower Lie smiled on her forehead and said. That's really hard for you. I will be in the 4th Division, waiting for you to come back. Click. Katetsu Izan, who had just stepped into the door of the captain's office with his right foot, was stunned for a while. The documents in his hands were also scattered all over the place. The eyes of the two were attracted by the panicked Katetsu Izan. I didn't hear anything. Katetsu Izan's face was flushed, and Baitetsu Chido, who had nowhere to stand, waved in the air flusteredly. She crouched down quickly and picked up all the papers again. A stack of messy documents was put on the desk by Katetsu Izan and fled from the office in panic. Katetsu Izan is seeing the sky again, panting heavily. There was absolutely no auditory hallucination this time. I just checked my hearing this morning. Katetsu Izan leaned back against the wall, his eyes shone with thought, muttering to himself. So, that is to say, the captain is serious. Terrible guesses appeared in her heart. In the captain's office, Yongyan is always wandering when he works recently. Unohana Retsu's smile remained the same, at least in Shimo's eyes, still gentle. It's time to give her a vacation, 5th Division. Captain's team house. Eisen smiles gently, as usual. He calmly looked at Kira Izuru kneeling before him and said, Kira, I'm not in charge of this matter. This is a chase from Central 46. Kira Izuru's expression is calm, but his hands are tightly touched, which proves that his heart is not like the surface. Kira did not dare to let Captain Eisen violate the secret order of Room 46. I just want Captain Eisen to try not to hurt Hinamori when he does it. Eisen nodded and said softly, this is natural. No recognition result. Although Hinamori made a mistake, he was the deputy captain of my 5th Division. Kira Izuru buried his head deeply and said in a deep voice. Thank you Captain Eisen, for the secret order issued by Central 46. Shimo naturally knew that this kind of thing was forged by Eisen. But what made him curious was that Eisen would actually go to this world to arrest him. And the escort would choose him unexpectedly. This surprised Shimo, but at the same time he was a bit curious. Eisen, what is he thinking? After completing his official duties, Shimo went to the 5th Division team house alone. In the captain's office, I saw Eisen again, Captain Eisen. Shimo nodded slightly and motioned, Shimo-kun. Compared to the official name of Shimo, Eisen is much more easygoing. Captain Eisen, when shall we leave? Shimo said straightly. Eisen gave a startled expression, then smiled and said. Not urgent. The Technical Development Bureau has locked Hinamori's position. We can go to this world in the evening. Shimo didn't rush after hearing this, and sat opposite Eisen. This matter is dominated by Captain Eisen, advertisement. I can go anytime. Eisen heard this, with a gentle smile unchanged, and asked. Shimo-kun, I actually have a question I want to ask you. Shimo's forehead, calmly said, Captain Eisen said straightforwardly. Although I don't know Eisen's specific thoughts, the soldiers came to cover the water, so there's no need to worry. What does Shimo-kun think about the secret order issued by Room 46 this time? Eisen's voice is calm, and the thick lenses blinded the changes in his eyes under the shining sun of the west. Well, of course I did it with all my strength. During Shimo's conversation, his words were relaxed, as usual. The secret order of Room 46, the team member of Gode 13, you can't hide it. Hearing that, Eisen was slightly taken aback. Shimo's answer was a bit unexpected, but it was reasonable. In his observation, from beginning to end, Shimo has always been like this. Even if the only violation of Yuling Ting's laws and regulations, it was forced by Zaraki Kenpachi to fight for self-preservation. In addition, Shimo can almost be called the 3 best teammates of the upper reaches of the Ling Court compared to some of the inferior Madara captains. But for some reason, Eisen always felt that Shimo in front of him had hidden his inner thoughts. It should be so. Eisen raised his eyes slightly and looked to the west. Outside the window, the afterglow is scattered. The time passes so fast. There is no fluctuation in Eisen's voice. Let's go, report to the captain, and discover the world. Yes, Captain Eisen. Shimo pressed his finger, followed behind him, and left the 5th Division. Although they had a secret order from the 46 room, the 2 captain-level existences had to report to this world after all. This process did not waste too much time. Yamamoto Uenyuji seems to be mentally prepared for this. When the sunlight completely disappeared in Soul Society, Shimo and Eisen also followed the Hell Butterfly's guidance and formally stepped into the gate. In the present world, Korakucho, with the development of current technology, the beautiful scenes of stars in the sky seem to be a luxury. In the endless neon lights, a simple door quietly opened in the air. Shimo and Eisen formally appeared in this world. The two condensed Lingziu under their feet and stepped virtually in the air. Eisen looked down at the scenery below her feet, and for a long time, she said. The Technical Development Bureau has locked Hinamori's position. We went to the visiting area and called. Shimo nodded. The two played shunpo and disappeared in place at the same time, on the street not far from Kurosaki Hospital. Hinamori Momo walked alone on the street. Since losing her spiritual power, she has stayed in the corpse. But I don't know why, such a long time passed, there is still no way to recover her spiritual power. Hinamori Momo feels a little tangled when he thinks about this. I hope the recovery speed of spiritual power can be faster, so that The sound of light footsteps appeared behind her. The familiar Ryotsu spread across the street. Hinamori Momo stiffened and turned hard to look behind him. When, Shimo-kun Shimo smiled and whispered, I found you, Hinamori. A stiff smile squeezed out of Hinamori Momo's face, completely different from the previous expression. Shimo-kun, listen to me. Before she could finish her words, her pupils suddenly shrank. Another familiar Ryotsu descended on this street. Hinamori Momo looked at the sudden figure in front of him in shock, and he couldn't believe his eyes. Blue, Captain Eisen? In the voice, there is a bit of joy and surprise. Hinamori Momo never expected that he could see Eisen again in this world. The joy of joy dazzled her head. Hinamori Momo ran in Eisen's direction subconsciously, but the terrifying Ryotsu came and instantly stopped his movements on the ground. Sorry, Hinamori. Eisen's expression is calm, and the smile of the past is no longer. His next words made Hinamori fall into an ice cellar, and his mind went blank for an instant. I came to this world this time to want you to return to the Soul Society as a sinner. What you did has seriously violated Soul Society's laws and regulations. Looking at Captain Eisen, who is usually gentle, he speaks to himself in a very strange tone. Advertisement Hinamori Momo feels like the whole world has collapsed. Seeking flowers she spoke several times, wanting to explain, but she didn't know where to start. Eisen's disappointed gaze, like a sharp blade, pierced her heart. Shimo-kun, prepare to return. Hearing this, Shimo withdrew Zanpakutō backhand, ready to open the gate to return. However, at the moment his arm was raised, a blue spirit beam flew from a distance. Ding! Shimo's fingertips point on the spirit child's arrow beam, causing it to collapse in an instant, retransforming into a spirit child and dissipating between the heavens and the earth. Under the street lamp, a figure dressed in student uniform walked out slowly. Two men with weapons bullied an unarmed girl. It's so overwhelming. Ishida Yulong, with bandaged hands, stands under a street lamp, holding a black and white spirit bow, arbor, in his right hand, and carrying a convenience bag in his left hand. I hate it this way. Before Shimo could speak, Eisen was the first to say. Who are you? Ishida Yulong pushed down the glasses on the bridge of his nose and continued. I am a friend of this girl, someone who hates Shinigami. Eisen looked calm, looked down at the collapsed Hinamori Momo, and said. It looks like, Hinamori, you have made good friends in this world. Shimo-kun. He looked up at Shimo next to him and said softly. I beg you here, I'll take Hinamori back to life first. Hearing that, Shimo's eyes flickered, a little surprised. He didn't expect Eisen to make such a move. Captain Eisen seems very anxious. Eisen showed an apologetic smile on his face and explained. I just want to return to room 46 soon. The good side intercedes for Hinamori and reduces the punishment for this guilt. When he heard these words, Hinamori Momo suddenly raised his head and looked at Eisen again with a glimmer of hope. In that case, Shimo stepped forward, turning his back to Eisen, and said. Then trouble Captain Eisen to go ahead. Eisen nodded, stretched out his hand to lift Hinamori Momo on the ground, and then opened the door of the crossing, preparing to return to Soul Society. Wait, what do you want to do? Seeing this, Ishida Yulong felt a little anxious. The Archfin pulled away, and the spirits gathered into a bundle of arrows, and wanted to launch an attack to stop Eisen. Boy, who allowed you to draw the bow? As soon as Shimo's voice fell, a terrifying oppressive force instantly fell on Ishida Uryu's body. The Rizi stream surrounded by Ishida Uryu's fingertips, in front of this huge Ryotsu, instantly collapsed, and even the arcane in his hand became dim. At this moment, his mind is blank, his eyes are blankly looking forward. What a terrifying power of Ryotsu. In front of this, even the power of lifting the bow can't be condensed. On the other hand, Shimo looked at the gradually closing barrier gate, and a strange expression flashed in his eyes. After giving hope, throw it into the abyss. It's really you, Eisen. Puff. When Shimo's consciousness distracted, the oppressive force gradually increased. Ishida Yulong was unable to stand even in the face of this pressure. He knelt on the ground with his legs weakened, and then his eyes turned pale and he passed out into a coma. After realizing that Ishida Uryu Ryotsu faded, Shimo realized that the opponent had lost combat effectiveness. It looks a bit ruthless to start. Shimo's expression was a bit impressive, but Long Xian won't calculate these trivial matters with me. He didn't take this matter to heart. However, in the street, a new huge Ryotsu attracted Shimo's attention. The powerful slash came at the moment Ishida Yulong fainted. Boom. The slash fell to the ground, forming a huge pothole. Now, young people now, Shimo said helplessly, is your temper so grumpy? Not far away, a boy with a bad orange hair carrying a wide blade stood there. The lenient Zanpakutō seems to have some deterrent power, but it is a pity that the power is scattered and not condensed. Kurosaki Ichigo stared at Shimo and said loudly, "Hey, you guy, what did you do to Yulong?" Chapter 109 Completely Crushed Strength? Advertisement obviously, because Eisen left early. Kurosaki Ichigo did not see the previous scene, but this doesn't prevent him from making a stand for Ishida Yulong. In the battle with Jillian yesterday, the two formed a simple but deep friendship. When I saw Ishida Uryu kneeling and unconscious because of Ryatsu's oppression, Black Ichigo will naturally not stand idly by. At the end of the day, Yichu's purpose for coming here was actually ignored by him. Are these little ghosts so rude? Shimo smiled inexplicably, sensing the change of Black Ichigo Ryatsu. You hurt my friend, and you want me to be polite to you? Kurosaki Ichigo backhanded Zanpakutō behind him, and Ishida Uryu, who was lying on the ground, fought to the side of the road. Shimo just stood by and watched quietly, but he didn't mean to stop him. He is still very curious about Kurosaki Ichigo, which symbolizes the potential among the 5 special features. Shimo had observed Kurosaki Ichigo when he was young, but he didn't notice too many abnormalities. Although its soul is extremely peculiar, it is mixed with the 3 powers of Shinigami, Void and Quincy. But fundamentally speaking, this potential is still limited. But when we meet again now, Kurosaki Ichigo has undergone earth-shaking changes. Shinigami's spiritual power is like a key, unlocking the potential of his body. Infinite potential radiates from Kurosaki Ichigo's body. Just as Ishida Uryu once commented on him, when Shinigami or Quincy is in a normal state, it is like a closed faucet. After controlling the August 27th switch, there will be a large amount of water gushing out. However, Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu, even though it is in a closed state, the Ryatsu radiated unconsciously, is still stronger than some Shinigami or Extermination Division fighting state. Hey, who are you? Kurosaki Ichigo's eyebrows are mixed together, staring at Shimo. Why do I feel as if I have seen you somewhere? Shimo smiled modestly and explained. Maybe it's your illusion. Introduce myself, I am the deputy captain of the 4th Division, Kyōraku Shimo. Hearing that, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyebrows have been blended deeper, making it impossible to separate. He couldn't understand Shimo's words. What is the 4th Division and 6th Division? I don't understand. My name is Kurosaki Ichigo and I am going to ask you for justice. The generous Zanpakutō pointed directly at Shimo, and Ryatsu emerged, giving a sense of intangible deterrence. It looks like you should be the human who took away Hinamori's power. Shimo smiled and said, Hinamori Momo, the former deputy captain of the 5th Division, violated the Soul Society regulations and passed spiritual power to humans without authorization. Now he has been taken back by the captain of the 5th Division to accept the penalty. If you don't go outside, it will be a capital punishment. Boom. Upon hearing this, Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu burst out instantly, looking uncontrollable. The huge Ryatsu pounded on the street, blowing a strong wind, blowing his death tyrant outfit. Don't look at me with that look, Shimo said helplessly, I'm just following orders. Also, haven't your elders taught you? Learn to control yourself. Boom, one click, puff. The force of terror and oppressive force, like the collapse of the world, descended on Kurosaki Ichigo. Unprepared, Kuro Ichigo directly followed in the footsteps of Ishida Yulong. His pupils shrank suddenly, and a trace of fear that originated from the bottom of his heart quietly sprouted in his heart. Kurosaki Ichigo gripped the handle of the knife with both hands, the blade pierced into the ground, making a creaking sound. He wanted to stand up with his own strength, and his own Ryatsu, which was surrounded by his body, was constantly climbing. However, his Ryatsu increased by 1 point, and Shimo's Ryatsu also increased by 1 point. A few minutes later, Kurosaki Ichigo was a little desperate to find out. The Shinigami's Ryatsu in front of me is like an endless abyss, endless. This is the true strength of the deputy captain? Black Ichigo cleared the way a little hard, blood spilled from his teeth, and bloodline was constantly leaking out of the tiger's mouth because of excessive force. Shimo was a little surprised, and explained. When did you get the illusion? If all the deputy captains are like me, then the whole world will be stable. Hearing that, Kurosaki Ichigo grinned, showing a grin that looked extremely tragic. In this way, I still have a little chance. When the words fell, Shimo suddenly saw Kurosaki Ichigo in front of him, a burst of Ryatsu who was not weaker than the captain. Suddenly, he broke through his Ryatsu oppression. A black figure jumped up from the ground, advertisement. In the moonlight, the shimmering blade of cold light came straight to Shimo. Isn't this still unaware of the difference in strength between each other? Shimo's right index finger and middle finger pointed out together. After all, a little lesson is needed. The figure flickered. Shimo still kept the appearance of his sword fingers and slowly withdrew his hand. Kurosaki Ichigo in the air has a stiff expression, feeling the pain from the soul. A sense of powerlessness comes from the body. The power is exhausted at this moment, and it collapses instantly. Boom! Kurosaki Ichigo fell from the sky, and Zanpakutō in his hand even touched Shimo within 3 meters. Shimo walked slowly in front of him and said blankly, "I have already cut off your lock knot, and Pashwi. The ability of Shinigami that you took away has been completely taken back. Even if I recover, I'm afraid I won't be able to do Shinigami." The voice fell, and the powerful Ryotsu struck again. Kurosaki Ichigo, who had lost his power, suddenly turned black and lost consciousness. "Don't watch it from the sidelines," Shimo said lightly. "Is it fun to watch me perform alone?" "Saw, Shimo-kun." The lightly picking sound rang above the street lamp. "Your words are on the punctuality." Urahara Kazuki jumped off the street lamp and came to Shimo, smiling. "You really have a talent for acting. If it weren't because I knew the inside story, maybe I might be fooled by you." Shimo sighed, pointed at the 2 people lying on the ground, and asked, "These 2 guys, leave it to you. The parents of both sides are very big-hearted. Don't you worry about me accidentally sending them to Soul Society?" Upon hearing this, Urahara Kazuki lowered the brim of his hat and said, "The one you killed can't go to Soul Society. What's more, one is Shinigami and the other is Quincy. In addition, in terms of relatives, I saw Urahara Kazuki pointing to Kurosaki Ichigo on the ground and saying, 'This guy even wants to call you a cousin.'" Hearing this, Shimo felt helpless. "Isshin and I have different opinions. If you have to count this, I'm still your predecessor." As a member of the Kyōraku family, Shimo's seniority is not low. But he never calculated these things. "This thing is too exhausting. I don't even understand it. Shinigami has a very long lifespan and has long ignored these things. What they value is your status and strength in Soul Society." "Okay, stop talking nonsense," Shimo urged. "Hurry up and take these 2 guys back for treatment. Just now, I really cut off Kurosaki Ichigo's lock and sleep. If you can't get timely treatment, I guess Isshin will go to Rukongai to find his son." Urahara Kazuki walked up to the 2 of them, picked up one with one hand, and couldn't see the slightest effort. Then, "Goodbye." Urahara Kazuki laughed and said, "Shimo-kun." Looking at Shimo again, he found that he had already opened the door of penetration and stepped straight into it. Urahara Kazuki smiled helplessly under the street lamp. Really a guy who does his own way. Soul Society. Shimo's reappearance is still in the team house as the first team responsible for commanding other teams. Naturally they have their own gates. In addition, the 13th squad, which is responsible for the task of purification in this world, also has a gate through the boundary. As for whether other teams have cross-boundary gates, Shimo is not clear. But it's worthy of affirmation that more than 90% of the superior nobles have more or less a certain degree of background in their families. Passing through the gate is not too rare, of course. Going through the gate to the world is not the power that any team member has. The stronger the strength, the more you need to report up. Next to the crossing gate, Changya Yuan Jilong is stationed here. As the 3 seats of the 1st Division, they often garrison missions near the gate. In addition, he is also responsible for guarding some dangerous existences that are sealed nearby. Advertisement: 3 seats with teeth. A Wafa Changya Yuan Jiru, showing an aged posture in appearance. However, its impressive aura gives people a feeling that cannot be underestimated. Shimo greeted friendly and asked, "What about Captain Eisen and Sinner Hinamori?" Changya Yuan Jiru whispered, "Before you return, you have already gone to the captain's office. Captain Eisen seems to be interceding for Hinamori and try to reduce his sentence." Shimo heard the words and nodded, "Thanks a lot." Shunpo was immediately launched and also went to the captain's office. But when Shimo just arrived at the door, he saw Eisen walk out of it with a low expression. "Captain Eisen, what's the situation?" Hearing Shimo's voice, Eisen turned his eyes, barely squeezing a smile on his face, and said, "For Hinamori's sentence, the captain can do nothing. Dividing one's own spiritual power to humans is an extremely rare case in the history of Soul Society. It's even Hinamori who is the deputy captain." The expression on Shimo's face was a bit rushed, and he asked hurriedly. The sentence of Hinamori. Eisen shook his head, somewhat helpless. "It will be handed over to room 46 for a ruling. The captain asked me to wait quietly." Hearing this, Shimo sneered in his heart. "Isn't the sentence in room 46 the same as your sentence?" But he is not stupid enough to dismantle Eisen at this time. According to his speculation, if nothing else, the new check-in task will be soon. "I hope that room 46 will be able to open one side." Shimo comforted Eisen's side, his voice a little heavy. "I hope so. By the way, how is the attacker boy in this world?" Shimo looked at Eisen's gaze, bringing this kind of surprise. "I didn't expect Captain Eisen to be so kind to humans." A smile appeared on Eisen's face and said softly, "Respect every life. It's an idea I once pursued." Shimo pretended not to hear the meaning of this sentence, but instead answered his last question. "I just made him lose consciousness 0.0, but the guy who took Hinamori's spiritual power later also appeared together. I broke that guy's locks and Puzu. Shinigami, who is beyond the control of the Link Court, is likely to cause us trouble." Eisen's eyes stopped, and the brigade nodded. "It should be." He did not raise any objections to Shimo's behavior. The two said goodbye on the streets of Donlingting. Eisen returned to the 5th Division, ready to complete his official duties. Shimo also returned to the 4th Division, waiting for the sentence of Hinamori Momo to be announced. Is it true that those who make big things don't stick to the trivial? Shimo on the way back, thinking, perhaps, this is the difference between me and Eisen. He suddenly noticed that Ariatsu appeared in front of him with a familiar chill. Shimo stopped, looking at a small figure, walking towards him. The silver self-colored short hair, the expression like an iceberg, and the emerald green eyes do not contain a trace of emotional fluctuations. The current captain of the juvenile team, Hitsugaya Deshiro. Bye-bye. Shimo's words directly broke his iceberg expression. Hearing this title, Hitsugaya Deshiro suddenly became a little frustrated. Damn it, guy. But under Shimo's surprised gaze, he took a few deep breaths, trying to suppress the anger in his heart. Shimo-kun. Hitsugaya Deshiro walked to Shimo with a sincere attitude. I want to ask you one thing. Chapter 110. The ruling is issued, a new check in task. Advertisement. The uncharacteristic Hitsugaya Deshiro made Shimo notice a little bit of guidance. He pressed his backhand on Hitsugaya Deshiro's head and exhorted. The age that I care about the most was used by Shimo to whip the corpse repeatedly. Thank you for reading this story at mtlarchive.com. Your support enables us to keep the site running. This is an adult's business. What about her? Advertisement. After several attempts, Hitsugaya Deshiro suppressed the restless emotions in his heart. He changed his name to Shimo. This matter is very important to me. Shimo's expression remained unchanged, and he calmly said. Hitsugaya Deshiro's forehead bounced with blue veins, anger burning in his eyes. Don't think so much, little kid, I beg you to tell me. I can't beat, and I still ask others. Advertisement. But there is no way. I brought her back together with Captain Eisen. Deputy Captain Shimo. Hinamori, has she returned to Soul Society? For this guy's purpose, Shimo saw it clearly. With eyes that can't hide things at all, it is estimated that they can only fool the 11th squad. Hearing this, Hitsugaya Deshiro was a little excited.